Someday, everyone comes the moment when you can visit such a significant event as an entrance exam. This moment has come for the applicants of the Valkyrie State School. Every year, a qualification exam is carried out here to take as many best students as possible. The first test for them will be the destruction of the goblins. They should also remember that the exam is broadcast live so that everyone can vote for their favorite. Their future actually depends on their results on this exam, so they need to make every effort to get the highest rating and get to the best class. Of course, there were a lot of capable guys from whom it blew destructive power. There were those whose specialization, martial arts, and their elegant battle style fascinated the audience. And among them, there were those who possessed both martial arts and destructive power, looking very impressive against their background. Oddly enough, the academy has a hierarchy in strength, and the strong, as a rule, easily get fame and wealth. But the weak, on the contrary. So it happened to our main character, young Asahi Hinata. He was so weak and awkward that he could not repulse even low-ranking goblins. The weaklings like him were not of particular value, but he was different from them. He was distinguished by an amazing weakness. He could not even raise a branch in order to at least somehow fight off the monsters. And all this because of his special costume, which he received as a personal artifact. Therefore, in such a situation, he only had to endure the blows of goblins. But he was so stubborn that at some point he decided to remove the suit and fight without him. It was very reckless, and looking at this, the audience was not in their surprise. His shame was broadcast throughout the country, and this turned out to be enough for him to get into the lowest class. From that day, his terrible school life began. All this could not have happened if at one point unknown monsters did not penetrate the world. For a couple of years, they managed to bring chaos around the planet, and ordinary weapons were ineffective against them. Therefore, for many, the only way out was to come to terms with his fate. However, people have hope in the form of sacred artifacts. People learn to embody a weapon from their own souls, with the help of which they were able to resist the monsters. Hinata's father was a hero who used a shield, and the young man dreamed of becoming the same as he is. But at one point, his whole life changed again. When his father fought with monsters, they were clamped in a corner, and the father ordered his son to grab his friend and take him to a safe place. The father considered him strong and was sure that the boy could protect everyone. Being a small child, Hinata was not particularly inspired by his words. After all, to look at how your father is a step away from death, not the best picture of childhood. And yet he trusted his father, took Shizuka's hand, who tried to pull his mother out from under the rubble, and together they ran away. Since then, Hinata began to train to become strong and protect people dear to him. The father's words were deeply populated in his memory and became fuel for his motivation. But having studied for 6 months in an elite school for warriors, the young man realized something. In this life, not everyone gets the desired by long efforts and training. There are those who are given from birth. Therefore, such people often despise those who were weaker for them. So it happened with Hinata. A man without a hint of talent became an outcast of society. It doesn't matter how he was actually a person. In the eyes of others, he was just a weak underground. None of the other students even wanted to talk to him, not to mention friendship. School days for Hinata have turned into real hell. Even, it would seem, a friend with whom he was familiar from early childhood and who once saved. Despite all this, she no longer noticed him and ignored him in every possible way. On that day, Shizuku also lost a loved one, and before entering school, they remained friends, going through all the difficulties together. But after entering the academy, everything changed sharply for the worse. And this was not surprising, because Shizuka is an excellent student who has a powerful artifact, while Hinata compared to her was a simple loser with a costume artifact. Over time, he got used to contemptuous views and a similar attitude towards himself. Even returning to the class, he could not relax or prepare for the lesson. There were already awaiting unkind friends. The rest ignored everything that happened to Hinata. All people with a low indicator of power and a weak artifact found themselves in Class E, like him. Such students, as a rule, had no motivation, and the teachers waved their hand for a long time. Simply put, Class E was considered a real garbage bucket of the school. And in his center was Hinata, who was daily subjected to beatings from Takayuki Kurimura. It was allowed to use artifacts only in specially designated places, but students of this class did not care about school rules, so Kurimura, possessing the gloves artifact, used it to beat Hinata. Even in such a lower class as E, Hinata was on the very day. 6 months have passed, and his life was getting worse. Some students tried to stop Kurimura, but it was useless. After all, he was the most ordinary bully at school, which, having chosen himself the goal, did not lag behind her anymore. Of course, other students were interested in why Kurimura aimed precisely on him. The point was that it was because of him Hinata was in the class of E. After the test with the goblins, an imitation of the battle took place, and Hinata became his opponent. He stubbornly did not want to give up and held Kurimura in an iron grip. As a result, both received low grades and fell into the lowest class. Hinata's purposefulness and the unwillingness to give up in the end turned against himself. But even in such a situation, he continued to smile, looking at the enemy directly into the eyes. His behavior annoyed Kurimura even more, bringing him to rabies. Despite this, Hinata received his benefits from constant beatings, all because of his artifact. The fact is that his artifact is a kind of shield, and in order to pump his abilities, he had to take damage. All these 6 months he endured the bullying of Kurimura to once become stronger and avenge. Kurimura allowed himself to speak excess, for example, about Hinata's parents, hinting that if artifacts are inherited, then his parents were the same worthless owners of useless artifacts. He also added that he would like to meet them and beat them in the same way as him. These words were deeply wounded by Hinata, but he still could not do anything back. No matter how strong his desire to hit the offender, he still could not afford it. Even when someone tried to object to Kurimura, he quickly put them in place. Such was Hagen's Shu. Therefore, other students also had to endure humiliation and follow his orders. So once Kurimura ordered a Shu to take a chair and hit Hinata as evidence of devotion. He fulfilled the order without a second thought, hitting Hinata on the head with all his strength, although he did not want to go deeper. This blow turned out to be a 10, handed for Hinata, which opened up new features of the artifact for him. But Hinata did not know about it yet, because he could not fully understand his artifact. He considered himself too weak, because even after training his efforts did not bear fruit. However, at one point, everything changed for him for the better. Hinata was able to increase the level of artifact as a reward for the damage received. His weakness costume turned into an indomitable costume. Prior to this, the young man believed that since his efforts were not rewarded, then it was necessary to continue to the end. Thanks to his stamina, he was still able to get a reward and get closer to the goal. 6 months ago, he learned about some features of his costume. At the entrance exam, his result was terrible, and if he had not undertook anything, he would be excluded. After all, the Valkyrie is a school that is held on the taxes of the inhabitants. Therefore, it is not surprising that if the student does not show potential, he is excluded. Without the support of the government, such students become nobody, as in fact Hinata. But he was not going to give up. He found a way to improve his artifact. It was known that the constant use of the artifact over time enhances it. But then Hinata did not yet understand what abilities his costume had. If there really is no benefit from the costume, it will remain a weakling. Now he could not afford to give up. He had to fight to become stronger. In words, everything looked simple and motivated, but in reality, it was much more complicated. Hinata still could not defeat even one goblin, but did not despair. He recalled that before people fought with monsters with firearms, and now it was his bare hands. He thought, to remove the suit and fight with a stick, but then from the artifact there is no sense, and he needs to be damaged, remaining in a suit. Then he remembered that if he touches an object that cannot use, he was hit by a powerful energy impulse from which a suit saves him. Hinata decided to turn this weakness to his advantage, and he succeeded. The pain was unbearable, but he was able to kill his first goblin. While the other students dealt with the crowds of goblins, Hinata with difficulty defeated one. It was insulting. Nevertheless, he succeeded, and his first magic crystal fell out of the monster. The young man even thought that he would fall dead right here, so I no longer wanted to use such a technique. But after so many efforts, he received a crystal, and as soon as he lifted it, he disappeared. Instead, a system window appeared with a message that he successfully absorbed the magic stone. The system was updated, and a new task appeared, to get 10,000 damage. 6 months have passed since then, and now the time has come when Hinata was able to improve her costume. But he did not understand how to do it. Looking through the parameters of the system, he found that with the help of a voice you can manage the costume, and the key word for improvement is to update. Hinata said the long-awaited word, and his suit immediately began to change. Now it was not a weakness costume, but a costume, which differed from the former not only externally. Hinata was surprised, because I had never heard about an artifact that changes his appearance before, and wanted to know what changes occurred in his abilities. A window with characteristics appeared on the screen, but the indicators of power, 14, and endurance, 18, did not please him too much. But the new suit gave him incredible power and protection. Nevertheless, he wanted to try out a new suit, and where else to do this, if not in the portal with monsters. All the same goblins remained his opponents, but now Hinata was sure that he could defeat them. However, he was not alone in the portal. Shizuka was also there. If for Hinata to kill one goblin was already an achievement, then for her they did not even fit for a warm-up. However, she was very surprised to see Hinata, who also came to train. Next to her was her friend and classmate, Sachi. She asked what she saw such Shizu there. The girl replied that nothing was just an empty place, so do not worry. Nevertheless, Sachi noticed Hinata, noting that this is the same guy because of whom the exam was interrupted. But Shizuka did not appreciate her humor, saying that if she likes to laugh at people, she should leave school and become a clown. Sachi asked why she was so angry, but Shizuka replied that she was not angry at all, she was simply annoyed. She was annoyed by the stubbornness of Hinata. After all, there is a limit to everything, so why doesn't it reach it? However, Sachi still did not understand why Shizu hates him like that. She only noted that his suit seemed to have changed since the exam. Meanwhile, the young man continued to train. This time he managed to keep the attack of Goblin. The defense of the costume was really increased. And although he received damage, this did not prevent him from trying to counterattack. But in reality, everything turned out differently. The Goblin easily knocked him down, poking his face into the ground. Hinata was disappointed. His plan did not work. He withstood the blows, but could not defeat the enemy. He thought about whether to try again the same technique as for the first time. Suddenly, the goblins began to clone, and when he tried to run away, they immediately overtook him. Hinata hoped that someone would save him. But then he remembered his father's words. In a critical situation, it is useless to ask for help. You need to rely only on yourself. He needs to be strong, become a hero who can save others in difficult times. It was such a hero who wanted to become Hinata. But if he now dies at the hands of low-ranking monsters, his dream will come to an end. Therefore, contrary to fear and doubts, he decided to use painful technique again. Thanks to this, he managed to win a little time to run away and come up with a new plan. The only problem is that he could not apply this technique. But it seems that this time it will not be needed. A message appeared in the system window. The costume reacted to his will and opened a new skill, Revenge, activated by a keyword. This skill transforms the accumulated damage into force and releases it for 10 seconds, but it can only be used once a day. Hinata had no time to think. He immediately decided to activate him. Having pronounced the keyword, he felt his body began to change sharply. He felt a surge of strength and without hesitation hit the monster. Then, without stopping, he rushed at the rest of the crowd of goblins to destroy them all. Hinata was supposed to act quickly and deliberately because the skill lasted only 10 seconds. However, in this short time he managed to defeat all the goblins. But this ability had one more minus. In addition to a limited time of use and a long rollback, such a pace greatly exhausted the body. Nevertheless, this could become his trump card in critical situations, albeit once a day and subject to damage received. In the future, he will have to constantly use this ability, but he will not be able to always receive damage. In addition, Hinata still did not know all the possibilities of his artifact. The transformation of the costume was like improvement, and he felt his characteristics changed. He thought, if this is a feature of his artifact, perhaps in the future, he will really become stronger. Meanwhile, a magic crystal fell from the next goblin. Having absorbed it, he opened a new function of the costume, a list of updates, thanks to which he could intensify even more. After a short rest, Hinata again set to work, continuing to attack the goblins. Now he no longer had to use a painful technique to defeat them. Thanks to the new improvements and abilities of the costume, it has become stronger. He finally managed to defeat Hobgoblin and get a crystal from him. Now Hinata could use the Hobgoblin Club without fear of an energy impulse. As a reward for the victory, he received permission to equip weapons, opened the skills Resistance to Blows, and Adaptation to Clothing, and also pumped the main characteristics. Hinata noted that his artifact improved significantly after so many updates. True, only Endurance managed to pump most of all. He also opened a list of tasks with which he could gradually strengthen his suit. Typically, tasks were reduced to the murder of goblins, and various bonuses were supposed to be fulfilled for their fulfillment. Perhaps in order to get more skills, Hinata will need to improve your costume again. However, he had not yet fully understood how exactly this could be done. Perhaps for this, you need some trigger. After all, when he studied the skill of Revenge, he was given a list of updates, although he was inaccessible. Perhaps in this way it is displayed by an improvement in the costume. Maybe this happened when Hinata first absorbed the magic crystal, but then it was written differently. Then, the incredible will of the owner of the costume was mentioned. Hinata had to think a lot more, but the next day he went to the hospital to visit his sister and mother. The younger sister of Hinata, Hikari, also suffered during the monster's attack and underwent rehabilitation. According to Hikari, she is already much better, and soon she will be discharged from the hospital. In appearance, it really seemed that everything was in order with her, and it pleased Hinata. However, the same could not be said about their mother, who suffered stronger than all. For more than 10 years, she did not come into consciousness due to crystal illness. The disease is caused by the poison of a certain monster, and the saddest is the antidote still does not exist. Hikari was also infected with crystalline poison, but thanks to her mother, she received only a small dose of it. Therefore, unlike her, she is recovering. If everything is fine, it will be written out next year. But besides this, there was another serious problem. A man named Kagor Ginja. He headed the Phoenix Guild, which fought with monsters. Hikari did not know who he was actually, so she treated him with kindness. At first glance, it was impossible to say that he is a villain or someone like that. He not only always smiled, but also brought various gifts for young Hikari. However, Hinata knew very well what this person really was, but did not want to talk about it to Hikari. Ginja asked him to go a minute to discuss their previous conversation. He began to say that to maintain a younger sister who would not recover soon and care for a sick mother is a heavy burden that requires a lot of money. Therefore, he offered his help because once the father of Hinata was also a member of his guild, but Ginji only pretended to be a good man. In fact, he was a real bastard. The fact is that crystals received from patients with serious illness have the same properties as magical crystals. Magic crystals are sources of new energy, and they can be obtained from the human body. Therefore, patients with crystalline disease under the pretext of research are sold at a high price. Ginji just wanted to take his mother's body allegedly to treat the disease, but in reality this was not so. Therefore, Hinata refused. However, even after that, Ginja did not retreat and continued to talk about money, recalling that there was almost nothing left of his father's savings, and hospital bills still need to be paid. Hinata himself perfectly understood this, without any reminder. Ginji noted that the Hinata artifact is the lowest rank, and it is unlikely to be able to earn enough with it to ensure the whole family. Despite this, Hinata did not depart from his decision and firmly stated that he would protect his family in no matter what. Because this was the last desire of his father, and he will do everything so that he would not be disappointed in him. Hinata asked not to talk about their conversation Hikari, and Ginja did not object. He did not want her to hate him. Ginji recognized the defeat and left, but finally told Hinata that if he changes his mind, he could always contact him. Returning to the ward, Hikari asked with curiosity what they were talking about, but Hinata only replied that this was a secret. He understood that in order to protect his family and fulfill his promise, he needed to join the guild and earn a lot of money. Hinata had to become stronger, much stronger, and in this, as always, the school portal with monsters, which will open again, will help him. He should not lose a minute, but on the way to school he heard strange cries. They came from around the corner and it seems belonged to his classmate, but Hinata decided to ignore this. It really was a girl from his school, Akane, but he passed by. Hinata decided that this was not his problem, and it was not worth interfering in it. Meanwhile, the guys continued to bother the girl, ignoring her request to leave her alone. The guys were something like Kurimura, the same hooligans, but at the same time they offered her money in return for reckoning with her body. Akane continued to resist, saying that this was some kind of misunderstanding, and they confused her with someone, but one of the guys said that she knew her secret. After that, they began to threaten that if she did not agree to go with them, then the whole school would learn about her so-called secret. They continued to assure that nothing would happen to her, and they would pay for it, but Akane was against it. In response to arrogance, she rudely answered and spat right in the face of the offender. He told him to go to hell with his proposals. Such a turn surprised the guys and angered them even more. One of them grabbed her and began to say that in fact no one needed her, that even her native family sold it. But Akane rejected his words, saying that she still has dignity. When the offender tried to grab her again, Hinata suddenly intercepted his hand. It seems that he still could not pass by this situation and decided to help Akane. The guy did not immediately recognize Hinata and asked if they were accidentally studying at the same school. But the girls that were with them immediately answered that this is the same Hinata, a weakness from Class E with the worst artifact. Hearing this, the guy also remembered him, recalling how he was disgraced on the air. The guys ordered Hinata to go quietly, because they have a business to Akane, and it is better not to interfere with him. But Hinata replied that this would not happen. This was even more angry with the guy, and he rushed to Hinata with his fists. Akane did not understand why Hinata intervened, because these guys are from Class C, and he is unlikely to be able to resist them. However, Hinata thought differently, and managed to first hit the offender. He easily threw him to the ground and hit him very much with his elbow in the back. Akane was amazed. It turns out that Hinata was actually much stronger than it seemed. She could not even think that he was hiding something. His resistance and hidden potential surprised not only her. Even Shizuka, who exceeded him in everything, trained all her free time. Unlike Hinata, she was much faster, stronger, but she did not have what he had. Despite the fact that everyone recognized her skills, even teachers. The teacher Takashi praised her for hard work and speed in the study of taijutsu. However, Shizuka said that she was still not strong enough because there is someone stronger. Takashi was surprised to hear this and asked, was there really someone stronger at her age? Shizuka confirmed confidently. She added that due to the unsuccessful choice of the goal, taijutsu was the only way out for her. Akane did not cease to be surprised. After all, she considered Hinata a weakling, unable to even cope with Kurimura. And now he easily dealt with the guys from Class S. It seemed that for him, such a fight was a slight walk. One of the guys tried to sneak up from behind. He even managed to grab Hinata, but he easily fought back. And then a powerful blow fell to the opponent, as if nothing had happened. Hinata managed to defeat all the offenders from Class C without receiving serious damage. This stunned Akane. She thought he was an ordinary weakling, but it turned out the other way around. He defeated them even without an artifact. Akane began to think, is he really so strong? One of the guys tried to rise, but Hinata was waiting for this. However, it was a distracting maneuver so that the other guy took out the artifact, despite the ban. He shot right at Hinata, but in the last seconds he managed to react and block the shot with his hands. However, the blow was so powerful that he threw it back a couple of meters. Hinata was surprised. He did not feel pain. Perhaps the enemy was weaker than expected. Passers-by reacted to the shot, already about to call the police for using an artifact. The guys realized that the situation was getting out of control and decided to escape, promising that this was not the end. Hinata was still considering what happened. Akane approached, asking if everything was in order. But he replied that everything was fine with him and nothing to worry about. She was surprised, whether he really has no damage after such a blow. Hinata said that he was leaving, but Akane stopped him, asking why he was not interested in whether she was involved in what had happened. He did not quite understand what she was talking about, so he asked if she wanted him to listen to her. Akane replied that no, she just wants him to devote a little time to her. Hinata said that everything was in order and he was not interested, but Akane did not lag. Then why he saved her if she had not supported him before? The young man did not know what to answer, so he nodded to the bouquet in her hands, saying that she should hurry. Probably she was in a hurry to someone. He turned and left. This was even more surprised by Akane. Previously, when he was beaten, he did not even try to resist. She considered him a miserable, but seemed to be very mistaken. Akane was even happy that she was mistaken. After all, in fact, he turned out to be a good person. Returning to school, Hinata continued to think about what had happened and think about how to become stronger. Suddenly, Akane approached him to say hello. He was surprised that she decided to speak with him. Akane admitted that she forgot to thank him for his help yesterday and wanted to do it now. Hinata replied that everything was in order. At this time, Akane's friends began to ask what happened. Hinata hoped to calmly go to class, but it wasn't there. Suddenly, someone shot him in the head from the same artifact as yesterday. Oddly enough, it turned out to be the same guys. Hinata thought they had come for Akane again. Akane friend, Kurimura, was surprised and asked her why the guys were so angry with Hinata. Akane thought they had come for her again, but the guys said that they no longer needed her. Now their goal is Hinata. They came to take revenge on him for yesterday, because of him, they could not have fun in their own way. But Hinata looked calm and only noticed that they again pester students from the class of E. This became even more infuriated by the guy, and he wanted to deal with him properly. Hinata wanted to answer something, but this time the artifacts took out several guys at once. To resist two guys with such artifacts is a serious problem for Hinata, which has the weakest artifact of all possible. Therefore, they could easily deal with him directly within the school. One of the offenders told Hinata to hate the past because now they will mock him until the release. But suddenly a shot flew into it, similar to a shell of an artifact. Akane did not stand aside and decided to intervene. Last time Hinata saved her. Now her time has come to help. From this, the offender got angry even more, saying that she surprised him. However, their artifacts were very different, and the difference between them was enormous. To demonstrate this, he shot directly in Hinata. Akane tried to stop him, but the guys did not care. At this moment, Kurimura approached the class and was very surprised to see what was happening. Hinata noticed one oddity. Despite the severe damage, he almost did not feel pain. Is it really my own abilities, not an artifact? He thought. If the system really shows its characteristics, not a suit, then it can become stronger. The guy who shot at Hinata was very surprised when he got up, deciding that he was simply unfinished. And Hinata decided to answer them, using his special revenge skill. He intended to prove to them that he was not a weakness, but a capable hero. With a powerful attack, he hit one of the guys, but he managed to put the artifact in the block. However, the artifact did not save. The blow was so strong that the guy literally imprinted in the wall. The rest of the students were in shock, like such a wimp as Hinata was able to do it. After all, his artifact should only repel attacks and not strengthen the blows. In addition, the offender did not understand why Hinata grins at his artifact. That guy, although he was not seriously injured, he admitted that everything happened too suddenly and he did not manage to react. And the other with an artifact gun decided that the reason for the resistance of Hinata was that he missed the solar plexus. Hinata at that moment thought why his blow was not as powerful as expected. Apparently, he absorbed part of the damage. Now he really had problems. The main trump card has already been used, but he was not going to give up. The teacher suddenly interrupted their fight, ordering to stop this in the morning. All the guys, except for offenders, sighed in relief. However, Kao for some reason looked displeased. Kurimura was surprised, saying that even a wimp could become so stubborn, having warned that it is better to be careful not to cripple. But Shu objected that he was mistaken. A giant hand is not the artifact that can be easily defeated. Opponents from Class C were not particularly affected, but Hinata was no longer what he was considered before. The young man used to think that his artifact was intended to strengthen the costume, but everything turned out to be different. In fact, the artifact makes it stronger than himself. This means that the skills in the system act even without a suit. Hinata wondered why, but still continued to wear a suit. He could still be useful with a sudden attack. The problem is that his artifact is still too weak, and yet he did not understand how to improve it. The thoughts were interrupted by Kurimura, who approached him. Kurimura said that he just wanted to praise him for today. Of course, it was a lie to strew with vigilance before the blow. In the eyes of Kurimura, Hinata was still the same week that he wore him food. But still, the changes have already begun. The strokes of the Kurimuras became not so painful. Hinata wanted to answer, but today he could no longer use revenge, so he decided to endure for now. At that moment, Akane intervened in the conversation, saying that she had come to talk with Hinata. Kurimura was surprised at her appearance, noting that in the morning she also defended him. He said that he does not believe that she protects such a discharge as Hinata. But Akane retorted that he only knows how to imitate others. Or maybe she was mistaken, and a different motive is hidden here. Maybe he is mocking the weak to like the girls, calling it a cheap trick. Kurimura did not answer and turning around just left. Akane told Hinata that he could no longer help him, so he better cope with himself. But he only asked why she helps at all. She admitted that she feels guilty that now guys from Class C are pestering him, and this act decided to apologize. Hinata replied that everything was in order, she should not worry, because he himself got into this story. In response to this, Akane shared with him a small story from her past. She said that her father fought at the advanced against monsters from another world. However, when she was still small, a crowd of monsters attacked him, and since then, he has not wake up. Therefore, her family began financial problems, and in order to feed them, her mother began to sell her body. Because of this, the mother every day became more and more strange, bringing new men to the house every day. She is so used to it that before graduation, Akane forced Akane the same. Akane, of course, is grateful to her mother for raising her, but after that, she fled to this school because she hates her with all her heart. She said that she wanted to become a warrior and fight on the front line in order to earn a lot of money. But she ended up in Class E, and if so continues, her future is doomed. Akane did not understand how those guys found out about this, but yesterday, they wanted to get this from her, in return for money. Despite this, Hinata asked her why she decided to share this with him. Akane replied that he too was drawn into her problems, and she did not like to remain in debt, although he was not going to listen to it. The girl also noted that she did not see the guys from Class C at a lunch break, which was strange. She asked Hinata to protect herself because they could vigor him after class, to which the guy answered the same. Akane, leaving, said that henceforth Hinata called her not you, but Yamura. Kurimura continued to be angry because of the appearance of Akane, because of her, he could not beat Hinata. Therefore, he decided that for this, he should teach him a double lesson. Kurimura offered to lure him in a quiet place where no one would interfere. But then he noticed something strange. In the window, he saw how Kaoru was communicating with the very guys from Class C. It seemed strange, because Kaoru and Akane, friends and those guys recently molested her. He decided to figure it out and come closer, telling Kurimura that he would return to the dining room for a wallet. Getting closer, he began to eavesdrop on their conversation. It seems that Kaoru was angry due to the fact that they offended Akane, and if so, she was in danger, so he thought. However, he did not even suspect that all this initially planned Kaoru herself, and she came to them to talk about that. The guys said that they should not report because they were already scolded by the elder. They said that yesterday they were caught when they completed the task. Besides, Akane strongly resisted. Kaoru was surprised when he heard this because she was sure that Akane would not resist. One of the guys asked her, didn't she tell them that Akane escaped to this school? Shu was even more surprised. They continued to discuss that in such a situation, Akane had to calmly sell their body. If so, Kaoru is a really disgusting girlfriend. But Kaoru denied this, saying that on the contrary, she kindly provides her with customers. She stated that this school is full of students with problems, so she helps them. And I'm sure that Akane will be grateful to her. In fact, Kaoru simply used her artifact for her own purposes. Her artifact is able to control the human consciousness, in fact hypnotizing it. The guys nevertheless asked her not to use the artifact on them, and asked why with such an artifact she is in the class of E. The answer was simple. Even though the artifact and incredible, it is useless against monsters. We need combat power, and there are monsters on which its abilities do not act. Therefore, the guys decided to try again, promising that this time they did not howl. Kaoru noted that she did not know how the elder would react to their failure, but he will definitely destroy their lives. They agreed that tomorrow they would again try to lure Akane to him, already using the artifact of Kaoru. She realized that he had just overheard an extremely dangerous conversation and did not know what to do now. He was sure he would not be able to stop the guys from Class C, and if there was also the eldest with them. Kurimura, of course, will not help either, because he himself will not be able to defeat them, and he is unlikely to agree. But maybe he will be able to ask Hinata for help, and perhaps he can help Akane. Akane's father was a real hero, and she always believed and was proud of it. Despite the fact that she often told him this, her father constantly denied her words. He said that the hero is one who fights, not sparing himself, and he is different. He said that if you can protect at least yourself, this is already good. After all, a person who firmly holds his position is strong, and advised Akane to remember this. But once these warm days with his father ended when the monsters attacked him, he was in critical condition. The doctors saved his life, but the disease was difficult. Akane continued to believe that one day everything would change, and her father would wake up. But her mother did not live with this faith. From that day, it has completely changed. Akane asked her not to smoke in her father's ward, but she did not care. Mother hated him for what happened, accusing that he did it on purpose, although he promised to protect them. Akane begged her to stop talking like that, but in response she only heard that she was really wrong because hospital accounts are too expensive. The mother also stated that after graduating from high school, Akane will have to earn the same way as she, and Akane did not want this. But there was one way to cure the father. A basilisk lives in another world, and its liver has healing properties. Rumor has it that she is able to heal any disease. Unfortunately, basiliski are very rare, but Akane believed that one day it could get it. Then she decided that she would go to the Valkyrie school to become a warrior, like her father. But at school, everything turned out to be completely different from what she imagined. Having entered there and ending up in Class E, Akane almost abandoned her goal, thinking that everything was already over for her. She was afraid to fight, believing that she might suffer. However, with the advent of Hinata in her life, everything has changed. He became for her an example to follow. At the exit from the class, Akane was already waiting for Kaoru, and she could not even imagine that her friend started. Kaoru used her artifact to hypnotize the Akane and take it to the elder. Meanwhile, Shu continued to follow Hinata to tell him about what had happened, but was afraid to do it. He was surprised when Hinata himself noticed him and asked what he needed. Hinata said that he usually walks with Kurimura, and asked why he was now pursuing him. Sue wanted to tell him about Kaoru and Akane, but could not say a word. He always mocked him, so he was embarrassed to ask for help. Hinata decided not to wait for an answer and said that he was leaving if he doesn't need anything. Even after that, Shu did not dare to say anything. Meanwhile, Kaoru was already led Akane straight to the elder, and Akane's gaze was detached. Shu until the last convinced himself that this did not concern him, but still surrendered and ran after them. At this time, the elder was looking forward to Kaoru and asked other guys if everything was in force. They assured him that this time everything would go smoothly, not like in the past. After all, now Kaoru herself will lead Akane, so there is no reason for concern. The elder decided to believe them because he needed Akane to earn a little. And at that moment Kaoru came, and with her, Akane, who considered her closest girlfriend. The elder was glad that she finally came, and Kaoru apologized for a short delay. He asked if she allowed her to use her artifact, to which she replied that not, but in no other way, it was the best way to bring her here. Akane was really Mila, to which one of the girls who was next to the senior noted attention. She noticed that the elder wanted her to become his girlfriend, but he replied that he was no longer. After all, she was still a child. However, he still decided to use it for his dirty earnings. Akane was under the hypnosis of Kaoru, so she could not resist and answered only as a friend ordered. Therefore, she said that she agrees, because she needs money to treat her father. The elder praised the artifact of Kaoru, calling it amazing, but there was one nuance. He noticed that someone else came with them rats, and it seemed Kaoru led her tail. Shu began to panic, not understanding why he had come here at all, because one could not cope with them. He decided to try to escape. But as soon as he got out of the shelter, Kaoru immediately used the artifact and hypnotized it. Shu was weak, so he could not resist and obeyed her artifact. The elder asked who this guy is and would he cause problems. Kaoru replied that everything was in order. This is her classmate Hagen, so there would be no problems. Since Shu was under control, Kaoru ordered him to undress Akane. One of the guys, part of the very trinity who attacked her before, said that he would shoot it in the video. Shu, being under control, could not do anything and did not understand why he always behaved like that. Why he is so two-faced. Having a sense of justice, he still finds himself on the side of the bad ones. It annoyed him, but as he thought, he himself cannot do anything about it. He knew the reason. It's easier not to resist and then apologize and say that there was no choice. But Hinata is not like that, he is different. And at that moment Hinata himself appeared. With a powerful blow, he brought Shu to his senses and was able to save Akane. Kaoru thought that she could subordinate Hinata just like Akane and Shu. But for some reason, her artifact did not work for Hinata, no matter how hard she tried. The elder asked her who was it, and Kaoru replied that she was another classmate. And at least at first glance, he seemed to be an ordinary weakling. This was not at all so. Kaoru tried to use the artifact against him, but he did not act on Hinata, and he asked her why she was doing all this, because she and Akane are friends. In addition, most likely she knew about her family problems and how she ended up at the academy. But Kaoru replied that it was for this reason that she helped her, providing the so-called work. Shu, who was subjected to her artifact, shouted to Hinata to beware of her because she was not at all the one for whom he was given himself. The girl did not give up, thinking that the longer the artifact would use, the faster she could subordinate the guy. At this time, Shu asked Hinata why he came here because he didn't tell him anything. Hinata replied that he had guessed this by his behavior and that he understands. Shu carried out someone else's order, although he himself did not want to, and his words were touched by Shu, who became even more shameful for his behavior. The very guys who previously attacked Hinata were also present with them, and they were sure that today he would not be able to escape as before. One of the guys, possessing an artifact in the form of a gun, suddenly shot directly at Hinata. But such a cheap trick could no longer spend as before. The guy was surprised when Hinata was able to recapture the attack, deciding that he was just lucky, but the elder objected that it was impossible to do this by chance. He asked Kaoru what artifact of Hinata had, to which she replied that he had no abilities. The elder did not think so, because there are no artifacts without abilities, and was sure that Hinata was hiding something. Despite all this, Kaoru continued to try to use the artifact against him. She was sure that he was obliged to work, because even the most powerful people could not resist him. Hinata was helped by his own artifact, who gave him resistance to mental attacks, which is why the girl's artifact did not act on him. Suddenly, another guy with a giant hand attacked him, but at the last moment Hinata managed to evade. Hinata was angry and did not understand why they were doing all this. What is the meaning of this? After all, artifacts cannot be used to the detriment of others. Their strength should protect people from monsters. But his loud speech only made the guys laugh, because they thought completely differently. At the same time, it angered the eldest, and he asked Hinata, does he really not understand the rules of this world at all? In his opinion, only a few people can get the approval of the government and join the guilds, and the rest are not able to even feed themselves. And you have to try for the sake of these artifacts for him a waste of time, because this will not bring us wealth. But Hinata did not share his opinion and did not want to live for the sake of enrichment. He asked if for the sake of money you need to hunt people who honestly try with all their might. And the elder confidently replied that yes, and no one else was interested in. And he was strange why this still did not reach Hinata. After all, if he looks around, he will see that everyone around is looking for a benefit for themselves. As an example, Kaoru, who sold her friend for the sake of money. And whoever he thinks is the right decision, because the main goal of this world is survival. Therefore, there is no guarantee that they will be able to join the guild, and only losers can try with all their might, as the eldest thought. Hinata did not agree with him, got angry even more, and in response to a loud speech attacked him. But his attack was blocked by a guy with a gigantic hand, complicating Hinata's path. The eldest said that he was disappointed in him, because he thought that Hinata would be a worthy opponent, but turned out to be an ordinary weakling. Hinata got angry even stronger, because for him, an artifact is a way to protect himself and loved ones, and for them, only fun and an opportunity to mock the weak. Therefore, he decided not to give up and prove with his perseverance that they are mistaken. The eldest was similar to Ginja, ready to torture as many weak for his own pleasure, and many have the same situation as he and Akane, only others use it because they are weak. To the anger, boiling inside Hinata, reacted his costume and launched a forced update. Thanks to this, he managed to break through the defense of the giant hand. He updated the artifact and activated the anger costume, which turned his rage into tremendous strength. Hinata told the elder and the rest that he would fight until people like them will disappear forever. The elder was surprised how the young man's power is changing and wanted to ask Kaoru about it. But her gaze spoke for himself. No one until that moment knew what kind of force this guy actually possesses. And when the elder lost his vigilance, Hinata decided to attack him. At the last moment, he managed to dodge, and he only slightly touched his face. However, the aura emanating from Hinata and his costume was slightly scared. But the elder was not going to stand and endure the beatings and decided to use his artifact. He also noted that although he left the school, he used to study in Class V. So the difference in the strength between them is a huge one, and Hinata himself is to blame for coming here. He attacked him with his artifact, but Hinata managed to block his blows. This surprised the enemy, because he did not understand how a guy from Class E could have a significant force. However, changing the costume, Hinata began to move better than before, and is it possible? But the elder continued to repeat about the difference in their strength, adding that he had much more experience. So it was. Hinata did not expect that having beaten off the attack, the enemy could still use them to attack again, and with the help of water tightly tied it. The elder considered it his victory, telling the enemy that he should be a little more attentive. After that, he began to attack Hinata non-stop, and he could not even get out of the trap. Despite the abilities of Hinata, the enemy attacks were more painful than he expected. The elder decided to share with him the peculiarity of his artifact, noting that he was able to freely manipulate them, passing water through it. Therefore, for Hinata, he was a terrible opponent. When he was going to attack again, but by a more powerful attack, someone suddenly beat off his blow. It turned out to be Akane, which Sho managed to rescue Kaoru from under hypnosis. Seeing this, Kaoru tried to apply an artifact against her friend again, However, this time she failed, and Akane managed to react first and knock out the artifact from her hands. Akane asked her why she did this, because she believed that they were good friends. And Kaoru replied that Akane herself wanted to make money. But it was a lie, and Akane could not believe that Kaoru really thought about her. Kaoru was also surprised, because she was sure that she would go in the footsteps of her mother and should be grateful to her. For Kaoru, all this was just a joke, but Akane finally infuriated himself. When she was going to attack Kaoru again, she was suddenly hit in the back. He was the same guy who had a gun similar to the artifact Akane, but more powerful. Hinata was connected. Akane is exhausted, and Shu did not have the courage to save them. The elder said that it was all over for Hinata, but later he will tell him what this world really is. However, Akane found the strength to rise and told Hinata that he was evil, but so far it could not do anything. She promised to try with all her might and be sure to show that she became stronger. After these words, Akane shot in the elder to weaken his vigilance and free Hinata from the trap. It worked, and Hinata was able to successfully get out of the trap. But Akane was no longer able to do anything and asked Hinata to finish what he had begun. Looking at the girl's determination, Hinata also did not retreat and decided to save her at all costs. For a former student, the artifact reused was not difficult. But now for Hinata, this was no longer an obstacle because his main trump card is the skill of revenge. A similar outcome of events surprised the elder, and he did not understand how the guy was becoming stronger every time. Hinata changed his tone and told him that they cannot be spread rot even if they are from the class of E. He came closer and began to attack the elder, and he was speechless in surprise and tried to answer in a hurry. Hinata continued to attack and drive him into a corner, saying that since they were weakly from E class, why he could not defeat them. Retreating, the elder slipped on his own bottle of water and fell. So he himself drove himself into a corner and gave Hinata a great chance to deliver a final blow. None of the offenders could even imagine that everything would turn so and their leader would be defeated. They could not believe his defeat and in despair tried to attack Hinata. But such attacks could no longer be carried out because this is not the first time for him. Hinata easily counterattacked and grabbed the elder by the collar, saying that it was better not to approach them. After all, he has no extra time to spend it on people like them. The aura emanating from Hinata was really monstrous. It was already a completely different person. Looking at him, Akane recalled her father's words that a person who believes in one goal is strong like no other. They could be congratulated on the successful end of this unpleasant incident because they all tried to glory. But the incident did not go unnoticed. Someone from school shot it all in the video and broadcast to the director. What they managed to see turned out to be very unexpected. The director noted that the school does not need those who go too far, and they will have to deal with them. He found out who spoils the reputation of the educational institution, but at the same time discovered something interesting. It seems that the next exam will be more interesting, and he was already looking forward to this. The next day, all 4 students involved in the incident with Akane were expelled from school without the right to return. Akane and Hinata did not expect such an outcome, believing that the guys would simply be punished. However, the girl noted that all of them had a bad reputation, except Kaoru, and at that moment Kurimura and Shu passed by. Kurimura did not care who was expelled there, so he was heading to the dining room, and Shu did not dare to speak with the guys. Despite the fact that he had something to say, he was afraid to do it. Hinata noted that he would like Shu to communicate normally with them, but Akane replied that some things are not changing. After all, when she thanked him the day before, he only replied that he did nothing and quickly left. Hinata was surprised at his behavior, but instead of hiding on this, he decided to go to the dining room. Akane decided to go with him, and Hinata asked why, because she had Banto with her. The girl replied that it would be cool to have lunch together. Hinata did not mind, so they had lunch in the academy park. He told her that his artifact received additional characteristics, and this greatly surprised Akane. For some reason, Hinata thought that she also had such opportunities. She asked if he had such options before, but too weak to use them, and Hinata confirmed. Yesterday, he was so angry that he did not even have time to check the system for updates. He improved the artifact, and the system announced a new improvement. The power of attack increased, and the anger costume began to strengthen it, which was required. Thanks to emotions, the costume has changed, and although Hinata did not know the conditions for the next update, everything went to the fact that it would become even stronger. Therefore, he needs to grow further and become stronger than he is now. Akane also wanted to go through a special training. Although she could not improve her artifact, like Hinata, still wanted to become stronger. That is why she promised to try with all her might, and Hinata said that she knew about it. He added that while she uses the artifact, her physical abilities will grow along with the strength and level of skills. The fact that she escaped with a small injury after that blow confirms this. It also proves that she seriously worked on herself. Akane was confused by his words, and she admitted that she was still not strong enough. But as promised, she will show what she is really capable of, and thanked him yesterday. Hinata replied that it would be so, and together they will become stronger. After their conversation, someone secretly watched from the academy. Shizuka watched them and chuckled that the weaklings looked good together. She asked Sachi if she thought the same way, but she did not agree with that. Then Shizu suggested Sachi to join their group, hinting that this could be useful in a second exam. But Sachi refused and stated that so far it refrains from the decision. Shizuka did not delight such an answer, but she said that if she changed his mind, let her report because there is still time. Sachi did not trust the people who were next to Shizuku. Bad rumors went about them, and perhaps they were involved in the exclusion of some students. She was sure that at first glance they seemed to be ordinary guys, but in reality, everything is different. Most of all, she was interested in Akane and Hinata, because they were not like the rest. Seeing how they cope with difficulties together, Sachi wanted to join them. But in Shizuka she saw a threat and sometimes even extraordinary cruelty. Training in the portal was important, but it was impossible to miss classes at school. The class teacher of Class E was Takashima Gonzo, who explained to the students that there are many ways to improve artifacts, but the development of the body is the key to progress. And although they were inferior to the rest of the students in strength, they still had a chance. They had to prove that their place in this class was the very sensation of the mistake. Seeing how Hinata becomes stronger, Kurimura began to worry. The teacher said that a second exam will soon be held, and if they do not change their assessment, then they will remain in the class of E. But even in this case, it was impossible to give up, because the level of an artifact is not all. The assessment depended not only on the artifact, but also on physical abilities and reason. Moreover, this year the exam provides for a command work. However, hearing this, the rest of the students were not particularly delighted, and Shu asked how the distribution would take place. The teacher replied that from the team there could be from 2 to 5 people, and you can choose them yourself, regardless of the class. Then Kurimura asked if this was a joke, because who would like to take the student from the class? Teacher Gonzo noted that this is a test in which they can get acquainted with new people, because the task of the school is to send excellent warriors for the country to the guild. And do not forget that in the guild, they will have to cooperate with others. He added that the class, although it is the lowest, they still need to try to get out of it, but Kurimura considered it impossible. In this, he blamed none other than Hinata, because if then he surrendered to the exam, everything would be different. After the lesson, Akane asked Hinata what they would do, but he did not particularly understand what she had in mind. Akane explained that they need to find participants for the group during the exam. Kurimura intervened in their conversation, saying that hardly anyone would want to unite with such a weakling as Hinata. Akane asked him what he wanted once he came here, but he replied that nothing. In response, he grabbed Hinata and stated that since he was feeling better, then let him run away and buy him food. Hinata already wanted to answer, but then Akane intervened and told Kurimura to go for food himself. Her words took Kurimura, and he asked for what she meant. He noted that they often spend time together, and asked if she was really going to unite with him after Kaoru was excluded. Akane replied that Hinata is much better than him, and Kurimura is not suitable for teamwork. He asked what she was talking about, but Akane pointed to Shu and asked if he was thinking the same. Kurimura grabbed Shu and began to interrogate, did he really agree with Akane? But Shu replied that this was not so. He had no reason to think so, and besides, he would like to unite with him. Watching this, Hinata and Akane wanted to intervene, but realized that it was useless. After that, Kurimura had doubts about Shu. Akane suggested discussing how to take a second exam, but without them, because they do not have time to think about others. Along the path, Akane spoke about Shu, and that it is useless to interfere in their affairs with Kurimura in order to save him. However, she hopes that someday he will change his position, and Hinata asked if everything would be in order if she unites with him. She replied that this was her own decision, so do not worry, because Hinata is strong and should be confident in herself. Many still considered him the weakest student, so he needed to prove the opposite on this exam. By accident, Sachi passed next to them and became interested in what they were chatting about. She noted that the atmosphere around Hinata has changed compared to what she had seen before. It seems that he really can prove himself and surprise everyone. Meanwhile, Kurimura became furious after the words of Akane. He asked Shu if there were serious injuries or deaths on repeated exams. Shu replied that yes, before this unfortunately happened. This year, a second test will be carried out on the territory of D class, taking into account real combat operations. Therefore, incidents with serious consequences are possible. Kurimura decided to create all the conditions for one of such random incidents. Meanwhile, the network was violently discussed on the network. Most put Shizuku and Sachi to win because they were considered favorites. And Hinata in the eyes of others was an underdog, and no one believed in his victory. But this did not demotivate him at all, and he continued to train to speak better than in the last exam. If earlier the sudden attack of the monster from the back would take him by surprise, and he could die, now he easily repelled such attacks and easily counterattacked opponents. From the first exam, Hinata significantly added not only in force, but also in other characteristics. However, there was something that did not give him rest, because he still did not understand all the features of his costume. The anger costume was much stronger than the previous one, but quickly exhausted his strength, and Hinata felt his energy left. In addition, when the forces ended, the costume imposed fines and spent health every second. Therefore, he needed to become even stronger in order to use a new suit without restrictions, because for some time, the indomitable costume would be its main one. Akane became stronger with him, because after recent events they began to train together. Akane came a little later on the planned time and apologized for the delay due to the additional classes that she attended. Despite the fact that the Valkyrie school was considered mainly military, studying was still mandatory. Akane asked why Hinata did not take additional classes because they could be useful to him. She was not very pleased that he decided not to visit them. Once Hinata has already studied additional material with Shizuka, but she said that ordinary learning is not enough. He did not want to talk about this Akane, so he said that he was studying everything on his own in the evenings, and the girl was surprised at his effort. However, now there was no time to talk, because the hour has come to train, so as not to fail the exam. Before his beginning, there was very little left, so they needed to become stronger in this short time. Secretly, Sachi peered behind them, trying to hide her presence, but Hinata managed to notice her. Suddenly, she attacked them, believing that they did not expect this. But at the last moment, Hinata grabbed Akane and dodged the blow. Akane did not even have time to understand who it was, and was very scared. Sachi appeared from behind a tree and praised Hinata, noting that he had changed noticeably. Previously, he would not even be able to notice her attack, but now he managed to evade. Hinata saw her for the first time, so he asked who she was, which greatly surprised Sachi. Akane replied that she knew her. The girl's name is Sachi Sirikan. She studies in Class A, and in rumors and strength is not inferior to Shizuka. Sachi thought that Hinata would recognize her, so when he asked who she was a little depressed. She replied to the words of Akane that recently, Shizuka behaved strangely, and she believes that the reason is in Hinata. Therefore, she came here to test him and see what he was capable of. Hinata dodged her attack and grabbed his weapon, passing an electric impulse through himself, as he could not use an artifact of this level. But Sachi too was not a mistake, and managed to dodge his counterattack. Her artifact made it possible to fight not only near, but also release a powerful stream of power at a distance. Hinata dodged, but Sachi exceeded him in dexterity and combat skills. Despite this, the guy did not give up and continued to beat off her attacks. However, the difference between them was huge, and Sachi was clearly not more even. She noted that he was already at a different level, and if he had not hidden his abilities, he could become even stronger. Hinata asked her what goal she pursues and why she suddenly appeared. She replied that all participants in the next exam want to unite with her, and she, on the contrary, is looking for an interesting personality. Therefore, she wants to unite with Hinata, as he is ideal for this role. But Hinata did not hesitate and immediately refused. Sachi asked, thinking that she had rumbled, but his answer did not change. The girl got angry and did not understand why he refuses, and Hinata asked if she really considered it possible to unite after a sudden attack. In addition, he is sure that she should not achieve recognition only by force, because she will easily fall into the best class. But then they will hate him even more, and no one will believe that he achieved everything himself. He, of course, is grateful to her but was forced to refuse. After all, his goal is to join the guild, and for this, it is necessary to earn recognition with his own efforts. Sachi did not begin to convince him, and, leaving, said that he was interesting, and she was looking forward to when he rises into the classroom. Akane, on the contrary, did not understand why Hinata missed such an opportunity. Hinata recalled that he had already said everything and added that Sachi did not even look at the Akane. She was only worried about her interest. It seems that Akane began to understand him, and Hinata added that from Sachi should not wait for teamwork, and for a good assessment, the efforts of the entire group need, otherwise it will have less chance of getting a high rating. Hinata's words delighted her, and she was happy that she had such a friend. Hinata continued to reflect on what had happened because Sachi is one of the strongest in Class A, and in all respects, he was inferior to her. She was still restraining, but even in a suit of anger, he had not the slightest chance. He felt excitement and decided to check the new updates of the costume, because in the current position, he could not catch up, but the list of improvements became longer. In addition, a new audience award was revealed to him, the significance of which he did not yet understand. Meanwhile, the operational group to combat monsters from another world discussed the situation. They regularly collected guilds to think about important solutions. The Minister of Defense was Ganlin Pin, who asked the question of progress in the investigation of the appearance of a new portal. The meeting was attended by the head of the Phoenix Guild, Kagura Ginja. There was also the master of the Deldora Guild, Shani Truman, and the courageous master of the Guild Victory, Shio Mizui. All three had a rank S. Ginji noted that they are desperately trying to close the portal, but to no avail. Shio said that if Ginja knew about this in advance, he had to report what Sherry agreed with. Ginji replied that if he specifically hid, he would have lost his job. Sherry said she did not want to deal with people like him. Their dispute was interrupted by the Minister of Defense, asking if there were any changes over the past 6 months. The gifted guildmaster Kyoto Heiken said that the intervals between the appearance of the portals began to decline. The guildmasters noted that so far they cope, but soon they may have serious problems. Therefore, a great disaster can occur again as it was before. Kyoto also emphasized that the monsters became much stronger than before, and when the next great disaster comes, the damage will be colossal. It is necessary to accept countermeasures as soon as possible to avoid this. Ginji noted that this needs suitable candidates for joining the guild. The director of the Valkyrie School, Atsushi Tsushima, replied that this year there were more capable students than they expected. In addition, soon they will conduct a second exam. Ginji asked the director if there are students who should pay attention to, and Atsushi replied that yes. Among the freshmen, Sachi Sikaran and Shizu stand out. He also has great hopes for them. Shizuka is able to freely control the vital energy of its artifact, Lunyanor. And Sachi owns the Geiborg artifact, which is able to generate explosive energy. The masters noted how strong and rare their artifacts. Sherry did not even hide what she wanted Shizuka to join her guild. Ginji asked if there was really no one else except these two. The director replied that in this exam, he could personally make sure of everything. He also added that it will be great if there are students who are good in defense at school. This vacancy has long been free, and they cannot find a suitable candidate for a long time. Ginji noted that a son is studying at the school, whose father took this role for a long time. Perhaps he may well take this place. The masters did not quite understand who was talking about, but Kureka added that it was Hinata, the same guy who completely undressed in the exam. The director replied that he was still studying at school, and Ginji was hard to believe in it. He said that he does not understand him, because he owns an incompetent artifact, but continues to fight. According to Ginja, this is too stupid. Atsushi replied that this was not entirely true, and soon he would show what his artifact is capable of. The day of the second exam has come, the day when the students are given a second chance to determine their rating. It is rare to see so many people at a school event. This year, the test will take place in the rank of Rank D. It was strange for the guildmasters to see anticipation on the faces of students before the exam, in which participants often get serious injuries. The director said that the modern world is full of bad news, so everyone needs a break. He also thanked Sherry for providing security service by their guild. But Sherry replied that it was not worth it because the preparation of successors is the work of their guild. In addition, she pays special attention to Shizuka. She noted that, as expected, Shizuka communicates with equal to herself, and Atsushi was interested in how she understood it. Sherry replied that she could see it from afar like a guildmaster. She also wondered if there are still students who worthy of her attention. Perhaps this is Hinata and Akane. This year, the second exam will be held in the confusing garden of the Portal D. The first group did not particularly surprise anything, even vice versa, disappointed. The students could not resist the monster, and it seemed that right now they would all die from his hands. However, the Guild de Luras, which was engaged in the security service in this test, did not let the students die and acted to protect them. But unfortunately for such students, the test was over. The audience was delighted with Guildia de Luras, who quickly came to the rescue of students when they were in critical situations. This year, drones will also fly inside the portal, ensuring security on the site itself. The Guild de Luras really showed the highest class, proving its title of Guild S rank. But do not forget about the exam rules. Being in the portal, students should earn points. Glasses can be obtained, for example, mining magic stones for hunting monsters, or collecting ore and various plants inside the portal, which will bring additional glasses. Also, the participants should not forget that this year their teamwork will be evaluated. Therefore, it is important not only how many stones or jewelry will be collected, but also their cohesion. Their success or failure will be broadcast on the screen and on the air. The students have only an hour to pass the entire exam, so they should hurry. Akane and Hinata will go the following, after the first group finishes. Akane noted that all this looks unpleasant. After all, he and Hinata treat this seriously, and the rest perceive as a show. She asked if Hinata infuriated it, because it seems that they are simply depreciated. But Kurimura intervened in their dialogue, who overheard their conversation and said that there was nothing wrong with this, because they are in the spotlight. But Akane and Hinata were not particularly understood what he was talking about. Kurimura replied that the broadcast of the second exam is now in the top on views. He asked Hinata if he would show the similar idea as last time. Hinata wanted to answer him, but Akane intervened, asking, did he really come here for the sake of this? To which Kurimura replied that he had just passed by. However, leaning on Hinata, he told him that this day is important for everyone, and nothing bad should happen. Shu seemed to want to say something, but because of his own fear could not. And then there was an announcement that the exam for the second group would begin very soon, so the participants should gather near the portal. Kurimura wished them good luck, but he said this clearly not with good intentions. Shu tried to say something but scared and decided to just escape. Akane did not understand what happened to him, because today he looked even strange than before. However, they had no time for chatter because soon the exam for the second group will begin. The teacher reminded the students that with them, there would be a device that they can use in an emergency to call for help. As soon as they give a signal, the Deldora Guild will immediately relate to their aid. And since everyone was intended with the rules, it's time to start a second exam. The second group aroused special interest both among the teachers and the audience because there was a Sachi, which had a powerful artifact. But besides it, there were also other, no less interesting participants. Most viewers also did not forget Hinata, in particular his first exam on admission. And the first enemy for them was a giant monster, OGR, which for many from the very beginning was very difficult. The furious beast was huge and quickly attacked, without waiting for actions from the enemy. Many thought that for Hinata and Akane, everything would end here, but it wasn't there. Today's Hinata was different from the guy who ran naked on the exam, trying to go through him. Jinji also watched the broadcast and was surprised when he saw how the guy had changed. The rest of the audience was also pleasantly surprised. Hin Master Sherry noted that she first sees a sacred relic that could change his appearance. After all, before, everyone considered him useless insignificance. But despite this, the director was merciless to those who have no talent. However, if a person had no potential, he would not even be able to get into the class of E. Therefore, Sherry suggested that in fact, Hinata is not a simple boy and will be able to pleasantly surprise in the future. The director of Asatsushi replied that her guesses were true, and he has high hopes for the boy. Meanwhile, Hinata and Akane continued to easily get out with a monster. Let Hinata be in the spotlight, but this is a team exam. Therefore, Akane also did not lag behind, because she also trained a lot to become stronger. An excellent duo came out of them, because Akane has a long-range weapon, and Hinata can be a shield or go into a near attack. Thus, they acted. While Akane distracted the monster, Hinata at that moment was waiting for time for a decisive blow. Their cohesion was at an incredible level, but more recently, they seemed candidates for departure even from E. From the monster, as said in the rules, a magic crystal fell, which gives additional rating points. Hinata thanked Akane for help, saying that she had done it perfectly, and the girl answered the same. However, Kurimura watched them secretly, waiting for the moment when Hinata and Akane will be in a critical situation. Akane noted that their training really paid off, and the sense of power is simply beautiful. Hinata agreed with her, because thanks to those zealous training, he really became much stronger. He managed to open a Fist of Rage, a technique that in an instant produces all the accumulated force. He received this skill with the Suit of Rage. He was able to achieve such a result in just 2 weeks. Let it and cannot wear a suit all the time. It will not hurt him. When Hinata was completely immersed in his thoughts, he did not notice how the enemy appeared behind him. However, Akane instantly reacted and killed a small monster. Hinata noted for himself that Akane fills his weaknesses. Thanks to her efforts, the power of her artifact has increased significantly. In addition, he began to better notice the enemies, like Akane herself. It was not important for them who against them was a huge monster or a group of goblins. They continued to act together, relying on each other. Akane easily knocked out small monsters, leaving the stronger on Hinata. And their teamwork ultimately led to victory. Compared to their current versions, now they are at a completely different level. Now Hinata also has a final blow, so passing a second exam should be easier for him. Akane noted that they again successfully coped and received even more magic crystals. At such a pace, they will go through the whole second exam and rise to the class higher. However, Kurimura was not satisfied with their pace and was disappointed that they did not die at the hands of monsters. He was not from his anger, although he tried to calm him down, but everything was to no avail. Kurimura could not believe that Hinata was able to defeat the organ. He thought that perhaps it was all the Akane, but no. Kurimura began to hate Hinata even more, because it turns out that he could all the time he could slam him, he simply spared him, hiding his true power. Therefore he decided to change the plan and return to the original, about which he and Shu agreed. Shu tried to convince him, but Kurimura was not herself from anger and did not want to listen to anything. Their initial plan was to set a couple of the portal's boss. It's just that the boss does not leave its den, but with the help of the artifact of the potion of the Shu, it can be easily forced to attack someone. Kurimura thought that they would die from the Ultra and he would not have to resort to such a plan, but everything changed. Shu always admired the heroes, and after the outbreak of war, everyone admired them. He believed that someday he would become the same hero who saves people from monsters, but his dream did not come true. Shu possessed an artifact, stem cells, after which he stopped believing that he would once become a hero. The ability of an artifact is simple. It receives an essence from living creatures and turns it into a potion. But alone, he cannot do anything because he does not have sufficient power to attack. For this reason, he ended up in Class E, where everything went downhill. To close his gap in force, he needed a partner with the capabilities of the attack. He became Kurimura. But it was only an excuse to achieve more, and he felt guilty for his choice. However, at the same time, he felt strong relief. After all, when he thought that he was bad, there was someone else who had things much worse. But Hinata, whom he used to despise, became much stronger, to such an extent that Shu began to doubt his choice even more. He was surprised when Hinata was able to melt those who once looked down on him. And while Shu was engaged in self-destruction, Hinata continued to work hard to achieve his goal. But his achievements did not motivate him to become stronger, but on the contrary, they were even more angry, so he went to this. He helped Kurimura to implement his sinister plan with the attack of the portal's boss on Hinata. Let him know that this was not worth it. He still decided on it. And right now, Shu has become those who hated so fiercely, and fights against who he wanted to become so. He, along with Kurimura and another member of their group, was next to the portal boss. An accurate shot at the boss hit the boss's body, provoking it to the attack. His potion quickly worked, and it remained small, to take the monster to Hinata. Kurimura noted that the ingredient that Shu used for the potion is pheromone berserk, because of which the monster attacks the one on whom there was a trace of the potion. He did not expect that the potion would work even on the portal's boss, but Shu began to object that they seemed to overdo it. Kurimura did not share his emotions, on the contrary, considered him too talkative for the one who himself began this. If he was a man capable of such feelings, he would not mind, but Shu also puts himself up with a victim, and this enraged Kurimura. However, he still had his own additional plan, which Shu did not know about. Kurimura said that it was time for them to leave, but Shu stopped him and asked where they were leaving. In response to this, Kurimura spilled the remains of the potion, making it the goal of the boss. Kurimura justified this by the fact that they needed to destroy all the evidence that could lead to them. She realized what situation he ended up and how he was mistaken, making such a choice, but it was too late. He asked Kurimura why he had all this, to which he answered that the teacher would probably begin to find out the circumstances of the appearance of the portal bars. And in this case, they would be excluded if they are caught. Shu understood everything. Kurimura is trying to hang all the blame on him, but it's too late. The boss fled after him, and Shu was weak enough to run away from him. He wanted to try to use the device to call help, but Kurimura ahead of him and quietly selected it. Shu realized what situation he ended up, and that Kurimura simply threw him. Besides, he would no longer have time to disguise the smell, but he had one potion left. And despite the risks, he intended to use him against Hinata. Meanwhile, Akane and Hinata continued to calmly pass the exam, killing one monster after another. Akane was glad that at such a pace she could go to Class D. However, suddenly someone spilled an unknown liquid from the forest. Hinata did not understand what had happened, and Akane asked if everything was in order with him. He first saw such a liquid and did not understand what it was, and most importantly, whose. And then Shu appeared from behind the trees, and Hinata was surprised when he saw him. Besides, all the wounded. The same boss of the portal appeared behind him, but now he attacks not his, but Hinata, and this is what Shu says that he will be enough. Despite this, Hinata continues to defend Shu and blocks the attack of the boss. But the boss is not an ordinary monster, so it will not be so easy to cope with it. Even in this situation, when Shu literally brought his death to him, Hinata continued to worry about him. Shu did not understand why he did this, why did not allow boss to kill him, to which Hinata replied that his life would not end here, because he does not know how to give up. The audience was also surprised when they saw the portal's boss and began to worry if everything was in order. Sherry ordered the guild members to immediately save the students, because this is a monster from the rank with whom they will not be able to cope alone. She also noted that this incident was caused by someone intentionally. After all, usually the portal boss does not leave its shelter, since otherwise the portal will collapse. The director replied that he knows about this and for the first time sees such recklessness. Units are able to crank this. He thought that it could be Shu, but still more was sure that the boy was framed. However, at the same time, he thought that now they could rely on Hinata. Despite the difference in the strength between the monster and Hinata, he did not retreat and continued the battle. Akane was worried about her friend, because fighting with the boss is far from the same as with some goblins. Despite this, Hinata managed to save Shu, and together they evaded the attack of the enemy. The damage from the previous attack by the boss still made itself felt. The difference was not only in strength, but also in skills, but even so, Hinata did not want to give up. He waited for the moment when he could calmly attack the boss, and managed to strike him. However, such a trick cannot be defeated. His power of impact for the monster is like tickling. Hinata did not look in the best condition, and Akane wanted to help him, but he abruptly pushed her away, saying to stay away for her safety. And at that moment, the boss attacked her again, and if he had not pushed Akane, he would have touched her. The pain was unbearable, and although Hinata understood that he had little chance of victory, he continued to hold on. Looking at all this from the side, Shu asked him why he did not give up. Akane also shouted to him that it was better for him to surrender and retreat, because they could not cope with him. However, Hinata continued to hold on. The young man understood that he would be able to cope with the part of damage, using the revenge skill, but he was unlikely to be completely able to defeat the boss. Shu shouted to him to stop, saying that it was his fault and he could leave the monster on him and escape himself. The boy provoked a boss to change priority for him, and it worked. Even so, when the monster rushed at Shu, Hinata did not retreat and suddenly attacked him. But this also did not work, and the boss easily could recapture his attack. Hinata would have been dead if not for his suit. Shu continued to tell him to run away and leave the boss on him, but he did not listen to him. After all, Hinata cannot just run away and leave the monster, and Shu did not understand him. But the young man replied that he should try to save everyone, as his father did. A man whom he respects. Even when his life was in danger, he was not indifferent to people. And if he runs away now, he will never be able to meet him. Therefore, Hinata must survive against the monster and defeat him at all costs. The young man continued to evade the boss attacks in order to at least detain him, because Deldora is probably already on the way. He thought that he could hold out until they arrived, but it was not so simple. Kurimura watched this from the side and was happy, looking at how his classmate dies from actually his hands. Nevertheless, Hinata's confidence ruined him. The young man could not defeat the portal's boss and died. However, he fulfilled the quest, as a reward for which he is entitled to a meeting. Waking up, he found himself in an incomprehensible place. On the contrary, an unfamiliar girl was sitting, saying that she had finally waited for their meeting, calling him the master. Hinata did not understand where he was and who the girl was in front of him because he had just fought with the portal boss. Is it really all a dream, or he died and hit heaven? But the girl helped him with an answer and said that he was already dead. And to be more precise, on the verge of death, so there is still chances to survive. Hinata did not understand how she was able to be behind him so quickly and what was happening here. The girl continued to say that he was alive only because she called him here, so he should be grateful to her. She also said that he should not be upset. After all, this spiritual world is under her control. In simple words, this is the world inside the Hinata costume, the inner world of the artifact. The girl showed him what is happening outside and the situation in which he is located. Therefore, if he is now returning, he is unlikely to be able to repel the attack and will die completely. Hinata asked her. It turns out that in this case she helped him, and she replied that everything was so. He thanked her and apologized for doubting his artifact. But the girl replied that he was still early to relax because he would definitely die at such a pace. She can help him, but only once, because she has no more strength left. Hinata asked her what to do, and she said that she would conduct a little briefing. For this, he needed to lean a little. After that, the girl suddenly inserted 2 fingers straight into the young man's eyes, which he clearly did not expect. The pain was monstrous, but the girl noted that she had adjusted her eyes, since he seemed to be forgotten to see them, since he was so recklessly fighting with an enemy whom he could never win. She noted that his combat style is too rude, so for starters he should study him properly. Along with this, Hinata's eyes changed somewhat. He asked her who she was and what he was doing inside his artifact. The girl introduced herself as a nameless traitor, but this only added Hinata even more questions. However, he had no time to set them. His time has passed, and the hour has come to return to the real world. He tried to detain her to ask something else, but she replied that he had not yet passed the test. If he wants to know more, he needs to become stronger, and then she will answer all his questions. After all, he should be curious why weapons like an artifact gave him everything that led to war, and why monsters who kill people began to appear from the portals. Hinata did not understand what she was talking about, but he wanted to ask her a lot of questions. In parting, the traitor said that they would still meet again, and she would be impatiently waiting for this. Waking up in the real world, Hinata seemed to become a different person. He managed to evade the attack of the boss, and Akane was happy that everything was in order with him. Hinata became faster, and it was easier for him to evade enemy attacks. Akane shouted to him that he almost died, and they needed to run rather. But Hinata replied that he would not run away, because he intends to defeat the monster. The portal boss continued to attack him, but the young man skillfully evaded his attacks. If before he had already been printed to a tree, now he felt like a fish in water. Thanks to new eyes, he can clearly see the boss's attacks and easily evade them. In addition to movements, he can also see his ominous aura and intention to kill. It really scared him. Hinata began to think that it was because he was on the verge of death. But despite this, now he could clearly see the enemy and his weakest place. Now that he could freely evade attacks and knew about the weak place of the enemy, it remains only to hit with all his strength, using the revenge skill. By this time, they were already found by the guys from the Deldoras Guild, who came running to save them. However, they noticed something strange, so they decided not to rush and consult with the guildmaster. Hinata, meanwhile, rushed to attack the boss without any back thought. He managed to evade the attack of the monster and strike directly into his weak place. He succeeded. The blow was so powerful that the monster was simply exhausted, and ultimately, the sea-wrapped boss of the Portal D was successfully defeated by Hinata. The audience could not believe in what they saw, because in the first exam, this guy ran naked in an attempt not to die from an ordinary goblin, and now he managed to defeat the boss. Hikari was also incredibly happy for his older brother and for his success in the exam. Even Shizuka was extremely surprised when she saw what Hinata was capable of. However, there were both those who rejoiced at Hinata's success and those who became interested in him, not with good intentions. After such a fight, Hinata was exhausted, but thanks to Akane, he was able to at least get to his feet. Kurimura was beside himself with anger and could not believe that his plan had failed again. He did not understand how this is possible, as the guy managed to defeat the portal's boss himself, and why his movements suddenly improved. Kurimura wanted to kill Hinata with his own hands. The guy who was with him in the same group tried to stop him, but all to no avail. But their conversation was shot by one of the guild members, and the guild master with the director also watched this. Sherry ordered the impudent to be arrested immediately, but the director asked him not to rush. Atsushi said that it is better not to interfere with them, but to the contrary to observe the situation. After all, if you stop Kurimura halfway, they will only scrap even more anger, which is why he can try to repeat this. Sherry asked if the director really wants Hinata himself to deal with him, and Atsushi replied that everything was so. She asked if it would definitely be a good idea, because it seems that he was already completely exhausted. Atsushi replied that if something goes wrong, the members of the guild will intervene, but now everything should be in order. Meanwhile, Kurimura rushes headlong directly on the exhausted Hinata. He was sure that he could finish the guy with just one blow and finish his revenge on this. But even exhausted, Hinata did not give up a position and easily blocked the attack of the enemy. This brought Kurimura from himself, and he began to smear his fists recklessly, trying to break through the protection of Hinata. However, all this was in vain, and Hinata found the moment for the counterattack. Hinata managed to tie him to the ground and asked Kurimura whether it was true that he had arranged all this. He, grabbing him, said that enough to try to kill and somehow hurt him. But Kurimura did not want to give up and tried to hit Hinata. Hinata answered him the same, hitting his head in the forehead. Kurimura did not even think that everything would turn around that way, and that the one he mocked at, he would be able to send him. Hinata told him that all this time he simply did not touch him, and this was even more angry with Kurimura. From anger, he recklessly attacked Hinata to take revenge on him for everything. But Hinata was no longer what he was before, and was simply not going to endure the blows. On the contrary, he attacked in response. He managed to defeat him without even using the artifact. On this, the school history of Kurimura was completed. The director noted that Hinata and Kurimura are an example of the difference between those who worked hard and those who did nothing. From this moment, the exam for the second group can be considered completed. The day after the test, the school life of Hinata and Akane changed dramatically. If earlier everyone looked at them with contempt and the desire to kill, now everyone is smiling when they see them. Akane noted that now everyone pays attention to them, although before that they ignored, and now they behave as if nothing had happened. But Hinata was glad of how his school days had changed and that he managed to prove his strength. Akane also said that now they are all different about them, and this cannot but rejoice her. The attitude towards them has changed even among those who seem to put a cross on them. Shizuka noted that yesterday, Hinata was able to impress her, and in some way she even changed her mind. But despite this, in class, he would never have won. Akane asked Hinata that it was with Shizuka because such behavior really infuriates her. Hinata replied that everything was in order because she is always like that, so her words should be regarded as a compliment. However, while someone was happy for Hinata, someone secretly wanted to harm him. Meanwhile, Shu was expelled for an attempt to kill students in the exam and collected things home. The final result of his choice is deductions, what he was most afraid of. At the exit from the hostel, he was waiting for Hinata, and Shu was surprised when he saw him. Shu said that he was just in time because before leaving he wanted to say goodbye to him. Hinata wanted to ask him about what happened, but did not know where to start, and Shu replied that he was not worth it, because he himself was to blame for everything. And in truth, the deduction is not the worst outcome for him, because Kurimura was placed in prison for minors for trying to kill. And he was just excluded, considering the victim, like him with Akane, so he has nothing to complain about. Hinata looked at him with a drooping look, but Shu said that he should not look at him like that, because there was no guilt in it. And despite all this, he will not give up and continue the study with his artifact. As a gift before leaving, Shu gave him a potion that he created with the help of his artifact. The director said that, despite the fact that his artifact does not have a power of attack, he can still be useful thanks to the potions. Therefore, he prepared for him a letter with recommendations so that he could continue his studies outside the Valkyrie school. Shu noted that maybe he has no warrior talent, but in this case, he will find himself in the manufacture of potions. After all, seeing Hinata's determination, he realized that he should also not give up and continue his path. Therefore, Hinata may be sure that he will not fall into despair, and once he will become much stronger. In the end, Shu said that he sincerely regrets what happened and that he was involved in this. And despite all this, he is grateful to Hinata for everything that he did for him. Their paths diverge on this, and from this day Hinata will continue to become the strongest hero, and Shu to look for its place in another area. Meanwhile, the director rejoiced at another past school year, noting that he went as smoothly as the past, even despite the situation. But despite this, he noted that thanks to this they were able to attract attention, and it seems that even Guildmaster Sherry was happy and very impressed, watching how the heirs train. She also noted that she would be glad to accept Hinata as an intern. This is really surprising, because usually they rarely offer an internship. The director also noted that now the first days are officially allowed to go to the front line. However, for this, they need to join the guild, and not everyone can. The secretary also added that the student should be in class with and above. Will Hinata cope, studying in the class of E? But this was no longer a problem. After all, from this day, Hinata was transferred to Class B, and Akane into Class S. On the one hand, Hinata was glad that he managed to climb a higher class, but not everything was so smooth. After all, most of the students who study in him doubted his achievements in the exam. In addition to Class B, there is Class A, and they both are very different from Class E, including training. In this class, Hinata saw opportunities for growth that were not available in Class E, so he needs to work hard so as not to freeze. But to be alone with his thoughts was disturbed by one of the students of Class V. He approached him, allegedly asking how it was to be in the new class. The guy introduced himself as Arakawa Subaru, saying that he entered Class B in order to get to Class A. And suddenly his smile gave way to contempt, and he asked Hinata how he managed to deceive everyone in the exam. He argued this by the fact that for all the time he had never heard that a student of Class E suddenly transferred to Class V. Subaru noted that everyone was curious how the young man was able to get into their class so quickly, and whether he really has skills that give him the right to be in Class V. Therefore, he believes that the incident in a second exam is his trick, which he imperceptibly turned. Subaru is sure that the boss of the portal was defeated by the members of the Guild Deldora, but Hinata only laughed in response to his accusations and did not want to answer him. In the last grade, he met such a guy, and it seems that in every class, there is a man like Kurimura. The teacher, meanwhile, reminded the students that up to the next exam, they would all remain in Class V. He also noted that the added students should not relax, because they should always aim in Class A. This year, only one student was able to transfer to Class A. This means that the difference in their skills is still high. Therefore, if they want to join a good guild, they should work out this difference. Subaru asked the teacher what he has in mind, saying that he really thinks that they are fooling around here, and noted that the training portal is useless for practice. But unfortunately, they have no other options for practice yet. However, now students who have switched to class with and above will receive a temporary license as confirmation of their abilities. With a temporary license, students can enter the training portals of Class C and D. Do not forget that for this, they will need the accompaniment of the guild recognized by Deldora and the state. The teacher noted that this is the so-called internship. Most guild members were able to gain valuable experience in their school years, but students should remember that this can be life-threatening, but all tests are worth a worthy place. Hinata thought about the words of the teacher. Maybe he will also be able to get to someone for an internship. In time, a lunch break came to him. Akane, despite the fact that they are in different classes, they remain faithful friends. She was interested to know how he was in Class B, and Hinata replied that she was not quite at ease. Akane had a similar situation. Although she came from Class E to Class C, she was unpleasant to watch the annoying glances of classmates. She also added that she recently encountered a guy like Kurimura. Having heard this, Hinata confirmed her theory that there are such people in every class. Akane also wanted to talk with him about the internship and find out what he was thinking about it. The girl noted that as an interns they can receive payment for their activity. Hinata heard about this for the first time, so he asked how much you can earn on this. Akane replied that it all depends on the guild and the portal, but even so, the price is high. Much more than for the victory over the goblins in the training portal, and only 150 yen is given for them. Hinata considered this an excellent opportunity to earn just going to school, pumping his skills with this, thanks to which he can help mom and pay Hikari's hospital bills. Growth in the training portal has already reached the limit, so it has come for an hour to switch to a new stage. He asked Akane how to apply for an internship in the guild. Akane replied that before each faculty, notifications about the set were posted on the board. She also noticed that there are always a lot of people in this place. Hinata already eagerly wanted to look at the results, but Akane stopped him, saying that the set would be arranged many more times. Now there is a process of selecting applications. Therefore, she proposed to submit an application with her after school, and Hinata was not opposed. Suddenly, Sachi appeared next to them, who also wanted to apply with them. The guys were surprised at her presence, asking what she was doing here. Sachi replied that her class is next to there, so there is nothing strange in her presence. She also noted that Hinata was finally able to prove herself, and now they can work together. Therefore, she would like to apply together, but Hinata answered no. Sachi was disappointed and did not understand why he refuses her. Hinata replied that he could not train with her, and they would probably fail the qualifying stage. Subaru also watched them. He was surprised when he saw Sachi next to a recently translated guy. He wanted to know what she was doing here and how she is connected with Hinata. He intended to get into the same guild where Hinata would be internship in order to reveal his true essence. In the end, Sachi filed an application to the same place where Akane and Hinata. Together, they submitted an application to the Elben V. Rajic Guild for the D. Urage portal. Upon returning home, Hinata wanted to relax and hoped that he would be accepted for an internship because only 3 could be accepted. Suddenly, a traitor appeared on the bed and asked if he really needed to worry about it now. Noting that with his current skills, it would be strange to die in such simple conditions, and Hinata asked what she was doing here in the real world. She replied that her body was attached to him, so there is nothing strange in her presence. Hinata noted that it was strange, because at their past meeting, she said that they would see when he became stronger. The traitor explained that then she simply answered his question, saying that he needed to become stronger, but to meet her, it is not necessary. Since his growth was significantly slowed, she decided to intervene, but Hinata was more surprised that the girl was able to pick up a book. She said that there is nothing to be surprised here, because artifacts arise from emptiness and can interact with physical objects. Despite this, Hinata still asked her who she really is. The girl replied that she had already introduced herself as a nameless traitor, but if he wants to call her by name, she would not mind. Therefore, if it is better for him, then from that moment he can call her Nashi, which also means nameless. The next day, Hinata was very alarmed, and Akane was curious what happened to him. However, he replied that everything was in order, not wanting to reveal the presence of Nashi. Akane still worried and asked if he was lying to her, and in response, Hinata decided to ask her something. He asked if she had seen anyone next to him, but Akane did not immediately understand what he was talking about. She was very scared, thinking that there was some invisible monster, but Hinata reassured her, saying that this was just a joke. Hinata realized that other people did not see Nashi, as well as the system of the system. Only the user can see all this, that is, he is alone. Suddenly, Sachi joined them, as if she was already part of their company. Akane told her that Hinata thinks that someone was next to him, and asked if she saw something Sachi there. However, no matter how Sachi she tried, she could not see anyone. Meanwhile, Nashi told Hinata that it was already the time to train and not sit idle. Starting from yesterday, she constantly repeats about portals and training, saying that with his current skills, he will easily die. But there was something that did not give rest to Hinata, because yesterday, Nashi mentioned something, which it was too early for him to know, because he was still too weak, and Hinata wanted to know what Nashi was hiding from him. At this moment, a teacher Gonzo approached them to report the results of applications to the guild. He also noted that he is glad to see Class E students who went to Classes B and S. Hinata asked him what happened since he came to them. The teacher explained that he had come to give them something, because he was responsible for the selected students. These were answers to applications for an internship in the guild, and Akane and Sachi were successfully accepted. Gonzo said that it remains to solve a couple of issues, so he was waiting for them after school in a conference room, and Hinata asked what about him. The teacher replied that Hinata had not passed. Instead of him, they took a student from Class A. And since they needed a strong shooter, they chose Akane. Subaru, who also submitted an application with them, was surprised because he also did not pass. The teacher also said that he would not go out halfway, otherwise he will not be able to participate in the raids for 6 months. Gonzo added that you should not be upset, because other guilds are also conducting a set. And at the same time, he received a special invitation from the S. Urage Gistoi del Doros. Hinata was very surprised when he found out that he was invited to an internship in such a strong guild. Despite this, after school, the young man continued to train in the training portal. Nashi congratulated him on the fact that he cleaned the monsters in the portal, but he was not particularly happy about this. Hinata also performed a quest to collect the magic stones of Hobgoblin. Now even the training portal for him did not represent a problem, and he needed to move somewhere higher. He had to raise his strength by 5 more, and then he will be able to freely use a suit of rage. He asked Nashi whether there was another way to raise strength, but she replied that it was useless. After all, going into battle in this state is like dooming yourself to death. Nashi asked him what happened to the eyes that his body granted him. It was about the very mysterious eyes of a warrior who helped Hinata overcome the boss portal. They allow you to anticipate the movements of the enemy, and this is a fairly useful ability. However, its main minus is the high expenditure of forces, so Hinata cannot use it for a long time. Nashi noted that it was most likely a matter of his low intelligence, and Hinata asked what exactly it means. The girl explained that this is the ability to realize and understand supernatural phenomena. Simply put, this is the power necessary to activate magic. Hearing about magic, Hinata was very surprised, but Nashi did not share his reactions because all artifacts are mysterious and powerful. He said that he had heard of monsters capable of using magic, but never saw people capable of this. Nashi explained to him that with proper transmission by magic, anyone can use, but the talent after transfer depends on the person. At the moment, Hinata had only 5 glasses of magic, which was extremely small. Having learned this, Nashi hated Hinata for his weakness for a moment. She said that it seems to have to use another method to make it stronger. Nashi admitted that in fact he could have experienced himself in the Seegeme portal for a long time. However, he will not be able to completely reveal his abilities there. Therefore, the time has come to switch to a new level of training, having finished with the school portal. Nashi said that if Hinata wants to become stronger, he needs to listen to her carefully. After all, having entered this portal, he will immediately feel the difference in his skills. Inside the portal looked like an abandoned room filled with traps. Hinata did not even have time to realize how the iron rod immediately flew into him. And then, hundreds of the same rods over and over again piercing his body, and then he realized that all his previous work and pain in comparison with this, he was frightened and woke up already in the ordinary world without understanding what happened. Nashi explained that the portal created by her tolerates only his soul and not the physical body. Therefore, while his soul is in the portal, the body remains defenseless. Nashi laughed, because Hinata was clearly red on the face of Hinata. Unjust. She noticed that he should be more modest, because he was waiting for much more deaths ahead. And with such a mood, he will never become stronger, although Hinata has not yet fully understood her words. The girl recalled that at the beginning of the journey he could not use an impenetrable costume, because certain conditions are needed to activate it. Hinata suggested that we are talking about emotions such as anger and others, but Nashi said that this is only part of the conditions. Its costume is far from as simple as it seems. One cannot achieve strength with only emotions. Hinata asked if he needed to clean the portal to awaken the costume. Nashi replied that he was thinking in the right direction. Since his body is vulnerable, while the soul is in the portal, Nashi suggested changing the place of training to a safer one. She said that in order to awaken the Hinata costume, he should show strength and put her soul into it. For him, death should not mean anything. His task is to overcome it at all costs. In words, everything sounded easy and inspiring, but in practice everything turned out to be much more complicated. Hinata died over and over again, and each time everything seemed new. But in spite of everything, he continued to get up and return to the portal. Nashi told him that even if he was tired of all this, he is obliged to overcome himself. He can be afraid of death, but must meet her face to face, not succumbing to fear. She noted that those who meet death are called heroes in this world, and Hinata himself knows this very well. The next day, Hinata looked pretty battered, and that last attempt almost became fatal for him. At that time, everything was different. Real pain and death are not the line to which he was used to. Despite the fact that Nashi gave up, seeing his doubts, and called him a weakling, returning to the artifact, he understood that he would not die for real, but something inside him worried. And today is the day when he becomes the interns of the Deldora Guild. Entering the hall of the collections of interns, Hinata immediately felt pressure from the rest of the participants. In addition to Shizuka, there was Hibishim, who was plotting something against Hinata. Together with them was Chloe Badge, who seemed to be quiet at first glance. I closed the list of interns from Class A, Akino Haikan. Unlike Hinata, all of them were from Class A, and it bothered him a little. However, Subaru, who openly hated him, said that the internship in Deldora could be too complicated for Hinata, turned out to be another internship. Shizuka asked him why he did not go with his from Class V. Subaru replied that, unlike Hinata, he was in Class B from the very beginning, and his skills are much closer to her than to Hinata. Akino told him that now it is clear why Subaru was in Class N, since he does not see the difference in their skills. Subaru was familiar with Akino, because earlier she was also in Class V. Akino asked what Chloe was thinking about it, and he replied that he was not interested. Besides, Subaru should not be his attention. His words touched Subaru, and he already wanted to compare their skills right here. Suddenly, a strange feeling appeared. Hinata thought that he was permeated with an iron spear, as then in the portal. Chloe told Subaru that, unlike him, Hinata noticed this feeling, and that is why there is a difference between them. The artifact, which was owned by Chloe, are invisible blades, for which he was called a ghostly shooter. Despite this, Hinata was able to catch one of his blades, and when he saw this, Chloe was very surprised. Shizuka noted that Hinata was too much sweating, only being with them in the same room. Therefore, if they continue to behave so sorry, she will better refuse this internship. In the end, she added that the weak, like them, was just a burden, and Hinata wanted to answer her, but at that moment the teacher entered the classroom. It was a teacher Gonzo, responsible for the selection of participants. He asked if everything was assembled and apologized for such an early convocation, because there was only free time now. Since everything is already here, he will explain all the details and subtleties, since their internship will begin in a week. Shizuka's words strongly touched Hinata, and he wanted to prove to her that she was deeply mistaken, considering him a weakness. Returning home, Hinata was angry and demanded that Nashi open the portal immediately. The girl did not quite understand where he got such a rush and so much energy. Nashi asked, was it all because of the words Shizuka? And Hinata was surprised to learn that she had heard everything. She called him weak, and he could not object because he is really a coward that is afraid to meet face to face. But despite this, he will not be inactive due to the fact that he was considered a weakling. Therefore, he will not be so simply backward, but rather, it will become stronger for this week. Returning to the portal, Hinata continued to hone his skills. This time he no longer came across simple traps and even successfully evaded them. He realized that he did not need to act recklessly. It is better to carefully look around and think before taking a step. After all in the world has a reason and traps that react to it too. In this way, Hinata began to better distinguish and notice where he was attacked. Its dexterity has increased significantly compared to what happened before. Even several obstacles did not stop him because he thought about how to repel the blow and did not run blindly. However, he did not always succeed, and it was worth losing vigilance for a moment. He immediately paid for it. He learned to predict the result and act ahead of schedule, but this was not enough. Ahead, he still had to learn a lot so as not to die at the hands of the enemy, and he continued to train because he was not going to give up, returning to the portal over and over again. As a result, he reached the portal's boss after a lot of time. At first glance, it seemed that it would be difficult for him to defeat him because it was the boss himself. However, in comparison with the trials that he passed, a similar monster is nothing, and as a reward for his efforts, he received concentration and ultra-reflex skills. A week passed, and the long-awaited day of the internship of the Deldora Guild has come. The guild participants were carefully prepared to avoid any problems. The assistant guildmaster Sherry acted as vice guildmaster S. Rag Hatsuma Jin. He reported to the guildmaster that everything was already ready and they can start. Jin noted that she was in a good mood today, and Sherry replied that it was because she is looking forward to students. In her opinion, it was precisely these for a long time that the students will become salvation for a long time, and in conditions of lack of labor. Of course, Shizuka caused particular interest, but the guildmaster said that that guy in a suit would come. Last time, Jin did not notice anything special in the guy, and judging by how hard the first test was given to him, he is weaker than any of them. However, the vice guildmaster was deeply mistaken, thinking so about Hinata. Meanwhile, the teacher Gonzo had already brought students to the internship. Students showed respect for the guild and thanked for such an opportunity. The aura emanating from Hinata was noticeably different from the one that was before. Sherry explained to the students that today they will enter the unexplored sea-wrapped portal. She is sure that the students learned this at the academy, and they, as usual, will be divided into 3 teams. Class A will stand forward because they are the most powerful and capable. 2 guys from Class B will go to the center with Vice Guildmaster. Today they must fight the portal boss and close it once and for all. Sherry also said that she was very hoping for understanding from the students because this is not a training, but a real battle. Shizuka asked if even for Deldora's the Sea-Rax portal is difficult, and the guildmaster replied that it was so. Their work consists in preventing the opening of portals and protecting the lives of citizens, because in their understanding, incapable people do not exist, so they use any opportunity. Of course, not all are like that, because there are those who do this for money and glory. For example, Kureka chose the first, and Sherry noted that for them, a great honor is to accept his great-grandson. Since everything understood everything, the hour has come to the portal. Jean asked the guys not to share, otherwise he will not be able to protect them in case of something. Even now, Subaru found time to once again show his hostility to Hinata. Subaru asked Vice Guildmaster, is he always put in the center, but he replied that this was not so at all because usually he stands at the front. As a rule, warriors on the front line destroy strong enemies, but the portals are simply teeming with them. Therefore, you can never lose vigilance because of your position. Last time, Hinata fought with the S-Ran boss, and apparently this time he will be able to meet with the enemy a little stronger than the previous one. It is time to start the internship and prepare for the closure of the portal. It was a sea-wrapped portal entitled The Way to the Hungry Beast, and when the central group entered it, a bunch of magic crystals was lying on the ground. It seems that this is the work of the front line. Subaru was surprised that they had so many noise in the portal so quickly, and Hinata, meanwhile, noticed the enemy's sudden attack. He managed to quickly react and repulse a flying threat. It was a monkey cannibal, which usually attacks stealthily and then attacks the crowd. However, for the Vice Guildmaster Deldora, such monsters are nothing. In the blink of an eye, he got off with a monster with just one sword of a sword, and Hinata realized what the difference was between them. Jin ordered to find the remaining monsters, because they must have hidden somewhere nearby. He also noted that the enemy hid, and that is why no one could notice this. Meanwhile, Hinata managed to find him as soon as he went into the portal, and this surprised Gina. It seems that he was really very mistaken about the guy in a suit. Meanwhile, the Elben Guild was in the D-Rag portal called the City of Water Spirits. Akane also began the internship at the same moment as Hinata. And if Hinata was Subaru, then Akane had a stronger partner. To cope with the monsters of such a portal for Sachi with its artifact was not difficult. But still, Akane was worried that at one moment she would kill her with such a powerful shot. Sachi replied that she would never have made such a stupid mistake, so it is better for them to quickly close the portal and go back. Due to the strength of the artifact, Sachi Akane could not take part in the battles herself. However, she was more worried about whether everything was in order with Hinata. Meanwhile, Hinata continued to kill the monster behind the monster. If earlier for him it would be a huge problem, now he did it confidently. Even despite the fact that Hinata worthy showed himself, Subaru continued to doubt him. And while Hinata fought, he just stood aside and watched everything. However, this did not last long, because Subaru did not want Hinata to take all the glory to himself. Subaru possessed an artifact hunting knife, which with proper use, could be a serious threat. Their efforts were also noted by Jean, and the guys from the side looked good. Subaru was still a little rude, but it has enough strength of attack and endurance. While Hinata has little endurance, but he is able to quickly make decisions. He does not cross his borders, rushing ahead, and always keeps the situation under control. Moreover, his reaction is extremely high, which helps a lot in battle. Jin noted that Hinata reacts faster than some team members, and even when it seemed that a crowd attacked him and clamped, he still did not lose heart. Such instincts can be developed only through real battles. Vice Guildmaster was very interested to know how the guy was able to develop such instincts at such a young age. Perhaps he was originally born with such strong combat instincts. But Vice Guildmaster did not even know what Hinata went through. During their training with Nashi, she once asked him that the first came to mind when he sees this, and Hinata replied that it seems to be poisonous. Nashi said that he got to the point, so to clean the portal, he needs to improve this instinct. A developed sense of danger begins with a simple thought like, there is something there. Therefore, he needs to learn how to contact each of his 5 feelings. With the help of eyes and ears, he will be able to notice an impending danger. In this case, he will be able to reflect the threat and counterattack the enemy. Meanwhile, one of the team members approached Gin, asking if he believed that there were too many enemies. Vice Guildmaster noted that this was really so, because everything was supposed to end after the front line, but something is wrong here. Did he really underestimate the sea-wrapped portal? Or perhaps something happened in the Guildmaster's group? But this cannot be, because it is one of the 10 people with an artifact with 5 stars. Therefore, they would never have lost such low-ranking monsters. However, the problem was another. She also touched the second group. One of the snipers aimed right into the Jin. But suddenly Hinata was in front of the fly, and the sniper was surprised how he could notice him. He was far enough, but even so the guy managed to see him and moreover to attack. The sniper handed over to the command that the task was failed, and he would continue to observe, expecting the next opportunity. Jin asked Hinata what happened, to which he replied that it seemed someone aimed at him. Vice Guildmaster suggested that it could be a guild of bandits, trying to steal the portal awards, but to attack the S-Rand Guild Madness. However, it was much more amazing that Hinata noticed an enemy whom even he himself did not see. At this moment, one of the guild members shouted, saying that they had a disaster, and the guildmaster is in danger. Jin could not believe it, considering stupidity the idea that Sherry could fall into a trap. Just half an hour ago, everything went calmly, and nothing portended trouble. Sherry explained the tactics to the group, saying that frontline soldiers usually leave several enemies for the rear. Therefore, they should be distributed so as to remain in touch and finish off the remaining enemies. She asked Shizuka, is it not dangerous? But Sherry explained that this is permissible in the Seijin portal. Moreover, they were not alone. The Guildmaster Deldora was with them. She could alone cope with monsters of this level. And these were not empty words, because otherwise she would not become a guildmaster. The artifact, which was possessed by Sherry, was indeed outstanding. She easily dealt with several enemies with one movement of her hand. Rumors about her incredible power turned out to be pure truth. Sherry emphasized that although she could do everything herself, the heroes are on an internship and fight the monsters in their interests. Shizuka noted that the movements of the monsters in this portal were completely different from those that were in the D-Wrapped, so one cannot lose vigilance. The guildmaster was pleased, watching how the guys did everything. At the same time, she became curious why Akane did not participate in battle. The girl explained that she needed magical crystals to use the artifact. Sherry said she did not mind if she takes a couple from defeated monsters. Akane wanted to pick up the most powerful stone among the rest, but Sherry stopped her, saying that this one could not. Akane artifact Kuklavad absorbed the crystals of the dead monsters, after which her doll took their shape, and she could control them. Sherry was surprised when he saw what artifact the girl possesses, because the opportunity to control defeated enemies is a rarity. Despite the fact that Akane itself was not too strong, an increase in the number of the team will not hurt. The list of candidates for the guild continued to grow, and it became more difficult to choose the right one. At this moment, opponents, snipers from the Guild of Bandits, approached their group. Their first goal was Guildmaster Sherry, and they believed that no one would notice them from a long distance. However, even at such a distance, it was not difficult to find an enemy for her. Due to their sense of bloodthirstiness, she could easily find them. It didn't end there. Dozens of opponents began to shoot at it, and Sherry ordered the rest to get into her protective circle since there were too many enemies. The connection did not work, so she sent one of the guild members to the central group for reinforcement. Shizuka did not understand what was happening, and Sherry replied that it seemed that they were ambushed. Akane suggested that this was the work of the bandit guild, and Sherry agreed, noting that they chose an extremely unsuccessful time to attack. If their goal was a reward, they would wait until the group overwhelmed the boss, because to attack the S-Rank guild is too much risk. In addition, the bullets were not from artifacts. Ordinary weapons are useless against the opponents armed with artifacts. It seems that they were only trying to detain them. But this was not limited to this. It seems that someone controlled the monsters and set them on a group. Sherry could not deal with snipers and monsters at the same time, therefore she entrusted the battle with the last interns. The bandits specifically chose the moment of internship for the attack, but their true motives remained unknown, because they probably understood that the plan was a failure. Meanwhile, a strange root began to grow under the feet of Shari. Enemies continued to shell the group, trying to weaken vigilance. At this moment, the roots quickly enveloped the guildmaster's legs, depriving her of control over the situation. Immediately after that, a magic dart fell into her hand, and Sherry did not understand what it was. When a monkey cannibal attacked her, she thought to easily defeat her, but the artifact did not work. It seems that the dart paralyzed the effect of the artifact, and it is good that at this moment Shizuka repelled the attack of the enemy. The guildmaster also warned the rest to take care of their hands, because the enemies own the technique that turns off the artifacts. The guys did not fully understand how this is possible, because the technique that deprives the opportunity to use the artifact seemed incredible. She replied that her artifact does not work, so now she will have to rely exclusively on them. There were too many enemies, and there were not enough forces of the front group, so they decided to retreat. But at that moment, in the distance, someone aimed Sherry, and it seems that it was no longer an ordinary sniper. One of the enemies shot at it directly from the rocket launcher, because while she is without an artifact, she will not be able to survive. However, at this moment the central group already arrived at them, and Hinata, using the revenge skill in conjunction with concentration. With his help, he easily recaptured a shell flying directly into the guildmaster. Everyone was surprised not only that Hinata was able to repel the attack, but also at what speed he did it. Using the skill of eyes, he found that opponents are about 15 and realized that he would not cope with everyone. In this case, the best solution was to weaken the vigilance of enemies, regroup, and wait for reinforcement. Thanks to this, the front group managed to win the time, and Sherry noted that he helped everyone a lot. Nevertheless, she was wondering why he came alone, to which Hinata replied that he had taken advantage of the same skill that allowed him to get the first, but it would not be possible to apply him anymore. Shizuka, on the contrary, asked him why he had come at all. Before this, the vice guildmaster told him that Hinata is the fastest of them, so it was he who could get the first. Therefore, to the question of Shizuka, he replied that it was Gin's order. Sherry noted that Jin gives such orders only to those whom she really trusts. Hinata really has grown a lot since then, and now he is not just a guy in a suit. Nevertheless, he did not understand why this was so upset by Shizuka, because on the contrary, he saved them. She admitted that this was true, but still she was tormented by a feeling of weakness, because during the battle she was useless and could not do anything. Sherry told her not to say so, because when her artifact was deactivated, her help turned out to be just by the way. Hinata did not quite understand what the guildmaster was talking about, and she explained that the enemies own the technique that takes the power of artifacts, so you need to evade their shots. He wanted to know about this with Nashi, but did not know how to turn to her, so he decided to speak in a whisper in the hand where the artifact was located. Nashi replied that she did not need to whisper, just ask the question mentally, and she would hear it, adding that the power of the artifact does not go by the hands of Sherry. Since magic crystals create space, they leave a mark on the hand, and the resulting artifact depends on the quality of this space. And it seems that she was taken away from her, so even if she touches another crystal, the artifact will not return. Nashi also surprised how amazing creatures, and Hinata was more struck by how someone was able to take the artifact at all. Haitu asked what they were going to do and whether they have a plan. Sherry replied that they just needed to wait until the vice guildmaster comes to the rescue, because this would be the most reasonable solution. At that moment, their group just arrived in time, and the angry Jin from the back attacked the enemy. He said that they would seriously regret that Deldoris had underestimated. Vice Guildmaster ordered the guild members to attack opponents so that they felt the whole power of the Deltoris. Sherry also warned Gina to be banned by their shots, as they own the technique of deactivation of artifacts. Shizuka noted that thanks to reinforcement now, it seems that they can cope with them. However, at that moment something strange happened. Someone seriously wounded 2 members of the guild. Vice Guildmaster was surprised to see this, and did not immediately understand what had happened. Immediately someone suddenly attacked him, at the moment when he weakened vigilance. Nevertheless, it was not easy to break it as ordinary members of the guild. But he noticed the strangeness, the artifact that was attacked by the one that belonged to Sherry. His guesses were confirmed. This was the enemy who took the artifact from her. The enemy noted that, as expected from Vice Guildmaster Deldoris, he easily coped with the 5-star artifact. Jin suggested that it seems that they not only know how to deactivate artifacts, but also use them. However, he had no time to think because the enemy continued to attack. Jin took this as a disrespect for himself and in rage easily repulsed all the attacks. Moreover, he was able to counterattack the enemy, but he blocked the blow and someone else appeared behind. The shield of this enemy was similar to the one that belonged to the father of Hinata, and at that moment, another enemy took out an artifact pistol. He shot at Gin, and he managed to block a shot at the last moment, but still received serious damage. Gina discarded a decent distance, but Sherry managed to catch him. Hinata realized that the mistakes could not be, given that the enemy was able to pick up the artifact and then use it. The shield with which he possesses belongs to his father, and this cannot be an accident. The enemy approached Gin and said that their client also put his eyes on his artifact, so he should give him in a good way. Meanwhile, Jean noted that it seems their client is a very unpleasant person, since he wanted to get someone else's. He replied that this was not so at all, just strong artifacts are now more valuable than any treasure. He also added that their client is smart, because the corpses could also remain an artifact, so they took advantage of this. After many experiments on corpses, humanity changed the meaning of life, becoming the most valuable goods, more expensive than precious stones. And having heard his words, Hinata understood everything. The shield artifact really belonged to his father. Sherry noted that before the theft of artifacts it turns out they aimed at them first, because they so desperately tried to get her. He replied that everything was true, because even the S-Urge Guild would hardly cope with such a sudden attack, and thanks to this, they could get strong artifacts. Hinata was so angry that he wanted to deal with them with his own hands, but he was stopped with an artifact of Sherry. The enemy noted that at first he did not recognize him, but noticing the costume, he realized that he was the same student. Hinata ignored him and wanted to ask where he got an artifact in the form of a shield in order to finally make sure of his theory. But the enemy said that he was not obliged to explain anything to him, adding that probably he was taken from one of the corpses that they conducted experiments. Applying the concentration skill, Hinata rushed directly to the enemy, because with this skill, he could temporarily slow down the perception of time in a ratio of 10-to-1. The opponents tried to stop him by applying the same artifact as against Gin, but Hinata was able to evade the shell. His reflexes were at a decent level, but it was difficult to resist the artifact of Sherry. Sherry noted that he was good, but this is still not enough. He needs to be even faster. Hinata continued to dodge, despite the fact that sometimes it was problematic. At the moment when his vigilance was weakened, one of the enemies was able to reach him and hit him. Immediately after that, another enemy used Sherry's artifact, trying to finish off Hinata. Jin could not allow this and rushed to the opponents to take revenge on them, not only for the members of the guild, but also for Hinata. However, his attempts were in vain, because it was difficult to withstand such a strong artifact even for Vice Guildmaster Deldoris. It was also noted by the enemy, which has an artifact of Sherry, saying that it is all over for them. Suddenly a couple more enemies appeared behind Gin, but the rest of the group quickly dealt with them. While Jin was aimed at two main enemies, the rest of the guys dealt with a small bipod. Meanwhile, Subaru continued to hide, afraid to join the battle with others. He thought that even if Deldoris are powerless here, unless in this case, a bunch of students would be able to do something. Haito, who decided not to intervene, but simply look from the side of what all this would lead to. Everything seemed to go well, but in an instant the enemy aimed at one of the students, Chloe, attacking him with a Guildmaster artifact. Shizuka managed to react and recapture the attack, but the blow was too strong and knocked it down. Only one such shield has incredible power, and the enemy has 4 of them. Jin asked them why they did this at a time when people are forced to unite against monsters, but in response, he heard that greedy people would always exist. As in this case, the soldiers serve only by consumables, and the enemy added that Jin himself understands this perfectly. After all, if you give them strong artifacts and treat them, if they are injured, they can be sent again to battle, and it doesn't matter who will fight, this will still not solve the problem with a lack of strength. But Hinata categorically did not agree with his words, saying that he was alive only thanks to those whom he calls consumable. And no one in the world will be able to replace these people, as well as the emotions of the day and the parting words that he received. Thanks to that day and the people who believe in him, he will continue to fight, no matter what. Hinata answered his costume to the unshakable will, having transformed his determination and courage into force. Now he became accessible to the costume of courage. The enemy was surprised by the way the guy's artifact suddenly changed only because of his emotions, saying that Hinata could have avoided death if he were a little more accommodating. But Hinata replied that he was not afraid of death. Most of all, he was afraid to lose and be on his knees before the enemy. In an instant, with an incredible speed, Hinata was behind the enemy and inflicted a powerful blow to him. The enemy did not expect this and was furious, tried to fight off Hinata, but it was useless. Now the difference between them is no longer the same that was before, and to defeat him for Hinata is the same as defeating a low-ranking goblin. Using his speed, he immediately moved to another enemy at the moment when he weakened vigilance. With a powerful blow, he literally imprinted him in stone, releasing all his anger. Sherry, of course, knew that his artifact was able to transform, but was amazed to see what kind of Hinata had power. However, in addition to the two main opponents, there was still a bunch of snipers and other monsters. But even so, thanks to the acceleration skill, Hinata easily reached them and defeated them. Hinata's skills continued to surprise. He seemed to become a completely different person in just a couple of minutes. Subaru continued to look at him from the side and could not believe in what he saw. From their very first meeting, he despised him, saying that deceiver and not worthy to be in Class V. And yet, now it is he who fights against all, while Subaru himself only observes what is happening. He could not believe that even when Deldoras could not cope with the enemy, Hinata still did not give up and continued to fight. Subaru realized that in comparison with him, he was simply insignificant, and Hinata is actually a difficult guy. This aroused a sense of determination in him, and he also joined in battle. Jin told everyone that they are not dangerous without an artifact, so now the best time is to attack. While everyone continued to fight, Haito and Akino sat on the sidelines, watching what was happening. As a result, the guys managed to catch all enemies, and they decided that everything was finished on this. Subaru doubted that handcuffs would be able to keep them, and Shizuka asked if he really knew anything about it. She explained that the police use these handcuffs to detain criminals, and if they try to use the relic, they will receive a strong electric discharge. Shizuka also said that if he does not know such elementary things, he may be more diligent and not rely on coarse strength. Sherry noted that all the fellows coped, and Jean added that thanks to Hinata, the artifact of the guildmaster was also saved. However, Hinata himself was now far from in the best condition. Just a couple of minutes of using a new costume brought him into a state, as if he were about to die. The suit of courage consumes too much effort, and this is not surprising because he could not even cope with the suit of rage, and if Subaru had not intervened, everything would have ended badly. Despite all this, Shizuka held out her hand to Hinata to help him get up. Not understanding why, he apologized to her, and Shizuka asked if he had really entered the battle with a thoughtful plan, but he replied that this was not so. In response to this, Shizuka said that in this case, it was better for him to leave the academy. Subaru did not understand why she was behaving like that, but Hinata noted that everything was in order. This is her usual state. In any case, Subaru also wanted to apologize to the guy, saying that he himself was not worthy to be in Class B, and asked if Hinata could forgive him for everything that he said. Hinata replied that of course he forgives, because from the very beginning he knew that Subaru simply wanted to humiliate him. In addition, he was proud that he got into Class B, which means that he worked hard for the sake of this, so Hinata understands his anger, although he himself did not care. Subaru was beside himself with joy, because it turned out that Hinata was actually a good guy. Sherry noted that since it was all over, it was time to return her artifact to the thieves, because if they were able to steal it, they will be able to return it back. He replied that he would gladly did this if he could, but an unknown guy interrupted him. A guy with green hair said that this is possible because they can simply be reinstalled. The head of the gang of thieves turned out to be this guy, and after these words he mercilessly killed one of his subordinates. He explained that it is possible to return the artifact, but he has no desire to do this. Sherry asked him who he was and why he had just killed his ally. And suddenly the bodies of Sherry and Gin seemed to be frozen. The pressure was so strong that they could not even move a finger. To her question, he replied that she should not worry because he does not kill people for no reason. And he killed him because he behaved recklessly, because it was originally ordered to steal an artifact and leave, and if they notice, just escape. But he decided to take advantage of the power received as his own, and thereby in fact betrayed the organization. Jin noted that it seems that inside the cube that he picked up is the artifact of Sherry. However, he could not even move, not to mention taking it away. An unknown guy also added that this is not the end, because now is the best time to kill them all. And suddenly swords that could instantly kill the target began to appear from the shadow. He also said that they will be able to move soon, but for now they leave, and thanked them for saving him time, gathering all his comrades in one place. But Jin never understood who this guy is, although it seems that his artifact allows you to control the shadow. In the end, he said that, together with the artifact, Sherry will take the artifact of Gin. But Hinata, in which the second wind awakened, did not agree with his intentions and suddenly attacked him from the back, demanding to leave artifacts. The enemy did not understand how he could move, and even more so, how he could repel an attack from the shadow. Despite this, he managed to evade Hinata's blow in time, disappearing in the shade. Suddenly he appeared behind Hinata and wanted to attack him, but he expected such a movement. Hinata quickly reacted and using the speed was right behind the enemy. He did not have time to dodge the blow, as a result of which 2 cubes with artifacts fell out of his hands. Hinata and the boss of the Guild of Thieves rushed for artifacts, hoping to catch the right one. While the enemy weakened the vigilance, Jin attacked him from his back, but he was able to evade. Taking one of the artifacts, he said that this was all and disappeared. Finally, he only stated that he remembered Hinata's face and was looking forward to their next meeting. The guilds of the thieves managed to leave, and Jin was furious from the fact that they could not defeat them. He also apologized to Hinata because he again had to save him. However, Hinata's forces were at the limit. After the second awakening, he barely held on his feet. Sherry noted that he had exhausted his strength and no longer the guy in a costume that retreats at a critical moment. So, at the moment when he saved her, he could not use all the skills and did not become stronger at the last moment. But even if the whole thing is in the artifact, it did not cancel the fact that Hinata is a very interesting guy. Later, at the headquarters of Kansai, at a meeting of the Alliance, Gildy Shani reported about the incident. Kyoto noted that the theft of an artifact is an unprecedented case. The Minister of Defense agreed, adding that it was urgent to find a solution. Sherry explained that in order to avoid repetition, it is enough to protect the hand where the artifact is located because the enemy will not be able to steal it without it. Shio noticed that he seems to know one guy who controlled the shadows. This person was a criminal from the S-Urgovi guild Niflheim. According to rumors, their boss has such a force. Linpin noted that each time they have more and more problems. Meanwhile, Ginja asked Sherry what she was going to do on, because he could not be left without an artifact. Shio wanted to object, but Sherry replied that she understood everything without his words. Now her artifact does not belong to her anymore, and it is not known whether she will return it. Therefore, Hatsuma Jin will take care of the Guild of Gildia, and she herself will resign, but she will not bother, because she still has business. And she had a special request to the director of the Valkyrie School. She wanted to ask for a favor. At the general meeting of students of the academy, they announced an important change in teachers. From today, a temporary employee will join the teaching staff. The former Hildmaster Deldora, Sherry Truman, will be their new martial art teacher. 2 days have passed since the portal passing the portal. Hinata received a huge number of magic crystals as a reward, even more than expected. Nanashi asked why he was so worried, and Hinata replied that she was thinking of selling them in order to pay for the mother's hospital accounts. She told him that he still could not absorb them all, as it were, did not want to. And this turned out to be true. When Hinata tried to use the largest crystal, he did not succeed, since he had not yet defeated the earthly magician. Hinata was surprised, realizing that he would not be able to deceive the system. Nanashi confirmed that it was, and as she said before, until he puts his soul into force, the costume would not reveal all the potential. Then he was able to activate him only because he fought with a strong opponent. But in the end, Hinata still turned off from excessive energy consumption. According to updates, a suit of courage enhances physical parameters, especially speed. If then he had not disclosed the strength of the costume, then most likely he just died. Therefore, in order to avoid this in the future, he needs to become stronger. Hinata absorbed a lot of crystals, thanks to which he was able to increase his characteristics. Now he could calmly use a random costume, and in addition he opened a new skill, fighting power. Nanashi was happy, watching how he was becoming stronger. The next day at the academy continued to surprise Hinata, and he thought that the most strange news would be that Sherry became a teacher, but that was not so. The former class leader announced that from this day the class teacher was Sherry Truman. Subaru did not quite understand how she managed to become a leader in a couple of days. He also did not understand why she chose their class, and not Class A, since he is much stronger than them. Meanwhile, it seemed that she aimed at their class for a reason, moreover, on someone concrete. And the main reason why she became their leader was directly Hinata. Nevertheless, Hinata himself did not understand what so attracted her attention, and was it really because of a cube? Then he asked whether it was possible to leave a cube with an artifact of the shield to himself, without any evil intent. He explained that this artifact belonged to a person dear to him, but Sherry refused, saying that this subject is too important for research. But despite this, then she promised that she would be careful about him. And yet it would be stupid to get upset because of this. So Hinata did not understand what was the matter, because before he had never been waiting for a lunch break to hide from Sherry's eyes. Meanwhile, during the lunch break, Chloe and Aquino from Class A met, and Chloe wanted to ask her something. Aquino was very surprised and embarrassed when he called her by name. Chloe was interested in knowing her about Hinata, what she thinks of him, and what impression he causes her. Aquino replied that she considers him a miserable, but Chloe replied that he had in mind not his appearance, but his strength. He asked her how she thinks. If he had fought with him, who would defeat in the end? Without thinking twice, Aquino replied that, of course, he would have won, having won an unconditional victory. But this was not the answer that Chloe wanted to hear. After all, if you compare their skills, even without much power, the speed of Hinata's movements exceeded him. Haido joined them, asking Chloe why he would not call Hinata to battle then, because fights with people are interested in much more than battles with monsters. He noted that such an opportunity will appear, because very soon the military festival of the academy will be held. During the lunch break, Akane and Sachi also wanted to see Hinata. Akane was interested to know how his internship was, but instead of Hinata, Subaru answered, saying that it was incredible. Akane did not quite understand who Subaru is, so I still decided to find out everything from Hinata himself. And suddenly Subaru asked them to take him to his team. But Sachi answered him that in no case, and Subaru did not understand the reason. She explained that he was too assertive and sharp, so he did not suit them, after which a small conflict ensued between them. Hinata was also interested in knowing how Akane passed the internship, but unfortunately Sachi again took all the glory on her as expected. However, Akane was concerned about something else, the feeling that someone was following them. She asked Hinata if he knew those two strangers who hide behind the door with a frightening aura. Akane noted that they have been following him since she and Sachi came to them, and she was interested to know why they had such a special interest in him. Subaru emphasized that Hinata is like a target today, first Miss Sherry and now someone else, and suddenly he shouted to those two to hide better, because they are easy to recognize. It turned out to be the guys from Class A, and Hinata aroused special interest in them. Sachi noted that the guy with glasses is Deba. He is a high school student from Class A and is fighting for first place among Sabotage. Hinata did not particularly understand what attracted the attention of another student from Class A. They came here to invite Hinata to their club research of magic objects. The guys tried to lure him in different ways, even saying that after the entry his combat power would increase to 3 million. Akane asked Subaru if he was also going to join the club, but he replied that he was not because it was already later the time of the year. However, Hinata refused them as he was not interested in joining the club. But then Sherry suddenly approached them, suggesting Hinata at least look at the club room. She was sure that it was worth it, and he would change his mind about his decision. Subaru did not quite understand why she was behaving like a real teacher, although she became only to him this morning. Nevertheless, after school, the guys still visited the club room. A real mess reigned in the room, but despite this, it was full of magical objects. Hinata asked if only they were in the club, and Deba answered something like that. But for starters, they wanted to introduce themselves. Deba Mitsuru, the second year from Class A and the president of the club next to him, Nishikori Miho, second year from Class S. Mitsuru noted that initially there were 3 in the club, but one participant left the team. It was Shu who left the club after he was expelled. Everyone knows that their academy is a military school, so most students come here for training, and there are few clubs. Most of them are concentrated in practice of skills, like a martial art club. Therefore, as for cultural clubs, such as the Club of Researchers of Magic Subjects, it is one of a kind. Subaru noted that if the student initially wanted to do something ordinary, like club activity, he would not have entered the academy. Mitsuru replied that everything was so their club was not at all popular, and they do not even have a promoter. Hinata asked if the club could become popular without a promoter, and Miho replied that he was, but last year he left. However, they managed to continue club activity, but already informally. Recently, the director said that the academy could no longer finance the club without a promoter, if there are only 2 people in it, so they will have to return the club room. Akane asked if that is why they asked teacher Shani to become their promoter. And this turned out to be true. Sherry herself was not against, provided that they would invite Hinata to the club. But Hinata did not understand why he was, and the teacher replied that she thought that he might need a cube with an artifact. She noted that magic objects are devices that absorb the energy of magic crystals. Their power is huge, and as a weapon they can be effective even against monsters from other worlds. However, in real battle they are used quite rarely, because they are largely inferior to artifacts. Magic objects cannot be compared in strength even with artifacts with 1 star, but this cube questioned such a conviction. Sherry explained that the object she holds in her hands is an object that can take possession of and steal someone's artifact. So far, they decided not to disclose his public, but it is still necessary to come up with and take measures. The teacher said that they found in a magic subject the unsolved potential that they still have to study. Therefore, it seems that in the future, not only artifacts will be used in the battles. Mitsuru added that this is not all, because magic objects also fulfill dreams and discover new opportunities. As for example, this costume is a strong armor that absorbs the energy of magic crystals. But despite its power, this armor is practically not suitable for use, but with proper developments, the ability to use it will be used. Akane asked exactly how, and Mitsuru replied that from this, we could make a super Hobot. Subaru and Hinata were not in surprise. She was not surprised by the reaction of the guys, because they probably like something like that. But Sachi's reaction surprised her. Sherry noted that she did not know much about robots, but she would like Hinata to join the club. And to be frank, she would like to personally train Hinata, given the secrets of his artifact, and if they manage to find out how to extract an artifact from a cube, the club will be able to transfer it to Hinata as a bonus. Therefore, she would really like him to join, but if he is against it, he would not force. Akane noted that it really sounds good. Besides, the festival is approaching. The festival between the military academies, where command battles will be held, would be very fun to participate in it with the club members. The words of Akane and Sherry were able to convince Hinata, and he replied that he agreed to join the club. Upon returning home, Hinata continued training in the portal of the spiritual world. He was able to get to another final stage of the portal, but he had difficulties. No matter how he tried to attack the monsters, everything was to no avail. He was quick and could dodge their attacks, but he still lacked his strength. Hinata even used a combination of Room and Fist of Rage skills, but this did not work. In the end, he was waiting for a failure, and behind him, another death. Hinata did not understand what he was doing wrong, and where he would take even more strength to attack. Besides, he lacks endurance, because of which he cannot use the suit of courage for a long time. Nashi noted that his affairs were bad. She thought she had grown a little, but he still has something to strive for. She also said that he was not enough, namely special equipment. When he uses a new suit, even for a short time, he becomes stronger than most opponents, but this applies only to those to whom he can cause damage. Therefore, he is still powerless against more hardy rivals, and no matter how he is strong, he will not be able to defeat them. But even Hinata did not quite understand what to do, but maybe the list of updates would help him in this. Nashi replied that this would not help, and even studying a new skill would not help him. After all, the problem is that the force that the artifact can store is unchanged. Therefore, he needs a technique, as for example with Shizuka, she was already able to master it. Its artifact fills objects with vital energy, which increases the characteristics. However, instead of filling in objects, she converts this energy into an attack. This can be called a special technique that uses the characteristics of the artifact, so it must also find out the power of his artifact and master his own unique technique. The next day, Hinata continued to think about Nanashi's words. A unique technique. This is not about the combination of skills and their activation, because he already used them, and this did not work. Looking at the appearance of Hinata, Subaru thought that something had happened to him. But Hinata replied that everything was in order. He just thinks about a unique technique. But Subaru did not understand what he was talking about, thinking that he had not yet woken up. In the meantime, teachers entered the class to make an important announcement. Pupils probably already know about the festival that will take place at the end of this month, and the progress of each of them will be evaluated on it. This is an official statement, but in fact it is an ordinary school festival, so they can have fun. In the end, they are just students. This year, the festival will be held in a spherical dome with a D-rank portal. Ordinary citizens will also be present there, so students should behave with dignity. Subaru asked that they were really just actors at the festival, but Sherry said that this was gratitude for the support of citizens. Hinata asked exactly how to test their progress at the festival. Sherry explained to the students that 2 events will be held at the festival. Individual battles and team battles. An individual can participate at will. However, team battles require membership in some club. Most rules are the same as on the final test, but there are additional for each year. Unfortunately, they will remain unknown before the start of the event, so the students will have to be patient. This bothered the students because it looked dangerous, but Sherry assured them that everything would be in order. But like on the final test, the festival will be guarded. Meanwhile, the Club of Researchers of Magic Subjects began its preparation for the festival. Akane was interested to know what exactly they would do at the festival. Mitsuru explained that the use of magic items is allowed for command battles at the festival. Therefore, if they can create a strong magic item now, they will have an advantage. In addition, they plan to open a kiosk to earn money for maintaining the club. Akane asked what they sold last year, and Miho replied that then they prepared yakisobu. Their kiosk looked very entertaining, and people were interested in watching how the robot was preparing. However, in the end, he exploded and caused a large commotion. Akane noted that her artifact is suitable only for battles at a distance, so she would like to get a magic item that will help her fight in close combat. Sachi, despite the fact that she was not in any club, was still with the guys, and Subaru did not understand why. But Mitsuru invited the children to listen to his small lecture on the abilities of magic objects for beginners. But before, it would be nice if Hinata called Miss Sherry here. Since they cannot continue without a promoter, Hinata agreed, and Akane decided to go with him. On the way, Akane, it seems, wanted to talk about him about something, but their dialogue was interrupted by strange cries. Several students from another school seemed to have started a fight right at the academy. Akane noted that these are the guys from the military school, however. Hinata among them noticed some, similar to her old familiar. The guys seemed to be talking about the festival and about the points that are enrolled for participating. It seemed that it was just a verbal conflict. But suddenly one of the guys hit the girl, and they could not just continue to watch this. Akane and Hinata. The girl, so that with them, noted that it was too much, but that guy was all the same. He continued to pester the girl, grabbing her hair, saying that her actions could harm his reputation. It seems that he did not really want her to take part in the festival, since she was from Class D. He wanted to force her to refuse to participate in the festival, but the girl did not want to. This was even more angry with him. He did not understand why she did not refuse. Did she really need points at the festival? The guy was so angry that he wanted to hit her again. However, at that moment, Hinata intervened and literally imprinted the offender face in the ground. The girl was surprised when she saw Hinata and did not even immediately recognize him. The guy whom he hit was not delighted with this and asked Hinata who he was to contact him. He tried to hit him in response, but this did not lead to anything, and Hinata was able to block his fist. Hinata introduced himself to the acquaintance of the girl whom he had just hit, and he would like to hear an apology to her for what he did. The offender did not understand where he had such a force, because of which he could not even move his hand. However, the girl replied that everything was in order. Besides, it was her problem. She gave him the papers and said to leave, and if they asked why he was delayed, to answer that because of her. But Hinata was not sure that everything would really be in order, but the girl replied that she did not want to arrange a commotion and therefore lose points. Despite this, Hinata did not quite understand why she was so worried about them. The girl thanked him for his help, noting that he, as always, was fair. Akane, watching all this from the outside, did not quite understand in what relations Hinata with this girl. Therefore, she decided to ask Hinata in what relationship he was with her. Hinata replied that the girl's name is Rin, and they are old acquaintances, like with Shizuka. Hearing the name Shizuka, Rin was not very happy, saying that it seems that she also works without turning hands, calling her stupid. But Hinata did not quite understand what Rin had in mind, but he did not have the opportunity to ask about it. The girl said that she had to leave, and she would be glad to meet him again at the festival. Meanwhile, upon returning to the Club of Research of Magic Objects, Hinata spoke about the incident of Sherry. However, she was most interested in whether Hinata was able to worthy of breaking the offenders, to which Subaru replied that the teacher was unlikely to say this. Mitsuru noted that it must have been students from the Military Academy of 1, or abbreviated as the Odi Academy, because only they can study by an outdated point system. The teacher explained to the guys that unlike them, in the Odin class is changed depending on the points. Therefore, they try to study more diligently, and from the academy they produce exclusively talented people. However, students of this academy do not particularly get along with each other, and in this Akane and Hinata were able to see for themselves, seeing everything with their own eyes. Sherry noted that even Deldoris has several ODI graduates, and many of them often refuse to work in the team. Some even substitute each other to climb to the top, and Mitsuru added that this is why many schools abandon such an assessment system. And about the fact that someone substitutes someone for the sake of the top, Akane noted that the Valkyrie is no better than them. Sherry asked Hinata whether Rin would take part in the festival, because the organizers can also participate in team battles, and she was just one of them. In this case, she will be a formidable opponent, because the Odi Academy will probably try to get victory for the sake of points by all means. Miho said in a confident voice that they would never lose and will definitely win. After all, if they show the best result in team battles, their club financing will increase. However, Hinata did not quite understand that under the words formidable rival, Miss Sherry had in mind. Meanwhile, Rin and Shizuka's paths quite accidentally crossed. The atmosphere around them was not the best, and they did not even greet each other. The only thing Rin said then was Shizuku the killer. Looking at her uniform, Shizuka realized that Rin also entered the military academy, but to another. Thanks to this, she was even more convinced of her rightness. At this time, the group gathered in the classroom of the Odi Academy to discuss the upcoming festival. The guy, who then raised his hand, was still angry and wanted to know from her how she dared to humiliate him so much. He wanted to know who the guy who beat him was. Was he really her friend? But Rin continued to ignore him, and in response to this, he decided to hit her again. But this time she was strangely dodged. Even more, she easily was able to deliver a response, as if slowing down. It really looked strange, but Rin only said that this was because he hit her earlier. One of the guys from the group noted that the girl had pretended before, and specially did not dodge the blow. Otherwise, a person like her, capable of dodging any attack, stumbled and scattered the papers. But Rin only replied that she just saw a person with whom she had long wanted to see. In addition, when it comes to a person who is not indifferent to you, you always want to show your weak side. She also noted that she was pleasantly surprised, because then Hinata was very strong and cool. The girl sitting next to them did not understand what it was about because Rin is only from Class D. However, this was not entirely true. She recently transferred to the new academy, so due to the lack of points, she was enrolled in Class D. This girl is Tamamine Rin, a former student of Class A of the Academy of Oz, who owns an artifact with 4 stars. Meanwhile, at the Valkyrie Academy, everything went on as usual. Hinata also continued to work hard, honing the skills of his artifact, but already enlisted the help of Sherry. Sachi always seemed that his aura was changing at each of their meetings, and this time it was not comparable to what happened before. Hinata honed every type of his costume, including the cost of anger, which he seemed to have already completely mastered. His next training step was to hit as strongly as possible without using other skills. Hinata managed to fill 1258 points. Sherry noted that with such tremendous force, he would be able to finish off the Djil enemy with one blow. Thanks to these trainings, Sherry managed to find out the rank of artifact Hinata, and based on the data, his current rank is 3 stars. Akane could not believe it, saying that he should have at least 4, at least because of his crazy lateral jumps. But Sherry replied that although his speed was really impressive, the rank of his artifact is only 3 stars. Subaru was also surprised because his artifact of the same rank, and also began to think that such an assessment was not entirely accurate. While Akane's rank of artifact had only 2 stars, Sachi, on the contrary, agreed with the ranking system, as she possessed a 4-star artifact, but Akane denied, saying that she could really defeat Hinata now. She replied that Akane is right. If she is now fighting with him, she would most likely lose, but the artifacts are not evaluated by victory over her. Miss Sherry added that artifacts are created to fight between each other and to prevent disasters caused by creatures from other measurements. It is important how effective they are against these creatures and not against people, and this determines the rank of artifact. Lack of intelligence, attack strength, and low damage lead to the need for recharging, so the assessment of the Hinata artifact is so low. And yet, for the artifact of Hinata, the rank does not matter. Sherry noted that most likely Hinata's costume replenishes her energy due to endurance, and Hinata replied that this was so. In this case, he must focus on the development of endurance, and this will help him prevent what happened recently. Hinata completely agreed with her because there really are not enough basic characteristics for a new costume. To become even stronger and more resilient, Hinata has to train a lot, for example, to run 5,000 circles around the field, which Subaru considered madness, thinking that Hinata would die so faster. Before continuing training, Hinata would like to discuss something else regarding unique technology, like a final blow. Sherry told him that usually the artifact uses his inherent properties, as Nashi already said. In the case of Hinata, he needs a technique that releases all the accumulated force in one blow, something like a Fist of Rage, which he received after the opening of a Suit of Rage. However, he was not sure whether it was worth using it, because he could have made a couple of blows, but looking at the list of updates, he noticed that now the Fist of Rage releases all the accumulated force in one blow. Meanwhile, Shizuka continued to train hard. While Hinata increased her basic characteristics, she learned to notice the enemy before he had time to attack. But she constantly believed that she did not work well, and she needs to train more. It is even better to concentrate in practice. At that moment, strange thoughts climbed into her head, reminding her past. Along with this, she recalled the last word Rin, who called her a killer. But suddenly her training was interrupted by a powerful explosion. The one who arranged it was Haito, who also trained at that time in the portal. She asked what he needed, since he came here, and Haito replied that he had come to invite her on a date, but Shizuka refused, saying that he was not her taste. But it was just a joke. In fact, he came to invite her to join the command battle at the festival. He noted that Chloe also wants to participate, because it seems that there will be someone in the team with whom he wants to fight. Haito said that taking part is a good idea, because as last time, a situation may develop when you have to fight people. Therefore, he noted that it is important to be prepared for battle with a person. Shizuka agreed to take part, despite all the disagreements. She was sure that Haito's words about the battle between people and the appearance of Rin were not at all accidental. Shizuka also said that if she takes part, he would definitely win, so he needs to be prepared. However, Haito had his own plans, but he did not disclose them, and only replied that he would be glad to defeat her in the team. Meanwhile, Hinata continued training inside the Nashi portal, trying to defeat the monsters again and hone his decisive blow. And it seems that training under the leadership of Sherry gave their fruits, because he finally managed to defeat the monsters, although this required a lot of effort. The day before the festival, the guys came to look at the counter of their club. They were a little disoriented, but Mitsuru and Miho noticed them and shouted to approach them. Akane noted that they really chose a great place at the festival. But this place became accessible thanks to Miss Sherry's connections. Mitsuru was surprised when Sachi did not see with them and asked where she was. Subaru replied that since she was not in their club, she said that she would focus on tasting treats. In any case, the festival will take place tomorrow, and this year the Academy of Valkyrie, One and Thor will unite forces. Team battles will be held on the first day, and individual ones on the second. Sherry told the guys that there are rules for team battles at the printout that they gave out yesterday, so it would be nice to repeat them. A team of 4 people should collect as many crystals as possible and put them in a magic item to earn points. The team will win, which will gain the most points, so they will also have to fight with other teams. Each member of the team will have bracelets on the arms and legs. These are a kind of magic objects, each of which weighs 30 kilograms, and one of the representatives of the team must guard the capsule. The rest will attach 2 balls to their body, which will be their main weapon. Every time the ball bursts, bracelets increase their weight by 5 kilograms. Subaru asked, Is it permissible if they have 30 kilograms in their arms and legs? It will be impossible to move with this weight. Sherry added that if both of them burst, they are disqualified, and they will have to leave the portal immediately. Mitsuru noted that first they need to deal with the balls of the opponent's team, and only then with the capsule. Some teams will probably strive for battle, so if the representative cannot protect the capsule, the team is end. Sherry also told them that to avoid this representative, the strongest member of the team should become. A clear favorite in this place, of course, was no one else, like Hinata. On the day of the festival, the square looked very lively. The number of people was simply incredible. This was not surprising, because today the military festival of the academies is taking place, in which 3 schools will take part. This event is held annually, but this year tickets were played in the lottery. The rating of the program has become very high, which confirms the popularity of the festival. Meanwhile, the guys were preparing with might and main for a team battle, but in a peculiar way. Subaru asked if Miho did not want to participate with them, but she replied that everything was in order because her artifact was not suitable for this. Therefore, she decided to better engage in the earnings of funds for their club, although Akane was worried whether she could handle a loan. Miho replied that it was not worth worrying, because Hinata said that one assistant would lead to her. And this assistant was his younger sister, Hikari, who just came to the festival. However, Hinata asked her not to load herself, since for the first time in a long time she visits such an active place. Akane was very surprised when she found out that Hinata had a younger sister. He replied that this was so, just for a while she spent in the hospital. But despite this, she will soon recover, and the doctors were not against letting her go. Meanwhile, the imminent beginning of team battles was announced, and the students were invited to gather at the entrance to the portal. Hinata apologized to Hikari for not having time to chat, because they already had to go, but everything was in order, because Hikari came here to help. Therefore, since that time, Hikari was completely under the responsibility of Miho. The guys advanced to the portal so as not to be late and not to miss the battles. Hikari also applied to the academy, and will be able to study next year. But Hinata did not know about this yet. On the way to the portal, they met Shizuka group, but their meeting was not the warmest. Seeing Hinata next to Mitsuru, she said that Hinata still joined the club of studies of magic objects. The atmosphere around was very unpleasant, but Hinata asked if she would participate in a team battle. Shizuka replied that yes, she was invited, and if she participates, she would definitely win. Despite the fact that this is an ordinary festival, why not prove yourself again? Her behavior was even more angry with the guys, and they did not understand why she was behaving with them as if they had already lost. But Shizuku only replied that they had no chance, and she really sorry Mitsuru for his team. Mitsuru replied that this was not so, because not only power is important in the team battle. First of all, it is a test of trust between the team members. And since their captain is a good and reliable person, he is sure that they will surpass all her expectations in strength. However, Shizuku was a completely different opinion, saying that only reliable force is important, which would not pull the command to the bottom. At this time, Miss Sherry announced the beginning of the team battles, and the majority was surprised to learn that she really resigned. She also said that, although this is a festival, do not forget about security, so in an emergency situation, participants can rely on Deldoris. They neutralized the portal bosses, so it is important for participants not to damage its basis. The participants will have an hour, and in the first 10 minutes, the battle between the teams is prohibited, as well as murders. They only need to destroy the balls of the enemy. If they cause serious injuries to someone, they are disqualified, so you need to fight wisely. Since everything understood everything, it makes no sense to detain anyone. It's time to start. After that, all the teams rushed to the portal in order to take advantageous positions as soon as possible. It was just a D-rag portal called Forest of Giant Branches, so it was not difficult to defeat local monsters for children. In addition, thanks to the Hinata costume, he seemed to be able to cope with the task alone. However, the costume was still very exhausting him, and he could not use it for a long time. Mitsuru asked what their situation was, and Hinata replied that no one was nearby, but it was worth maintaining vigilance. 10 minutes have passed since the entrance to the portal, and right now a collision may occur with other participants. In team battles, a clash should be avoided. Instead, it is better to collect magic crystals. The guys wanted to believe that they would be able to peacefully pass this festival. However, at that moment, the ball on the right hand Akane burst. Someone shot him at a very long distance. These were the guys from the Academy 1, which were aimed not only at the team, but also at Hinata. The audience was delighted that after 10 minutes, one of the teams had already attacked the other. Sherry was not delighted, recalling that she asked them to be more attentive, but Jin noted that there was nothing to be done here. Hinata could not react to the attack, which meant that they owned this kind of artifact. Teacher Gonzo also noted that this is truly impressive. The shooter was Hanasaki Reiko from the class at the Academy 1. She was quite a mark, and her artifact did not even make a sound. She really was a quiet sniper. Sherry noted that it seems that students of this academy specialize in combat abilities, but now Hinata and the rest have understood their situation. Meanwhile, Jin continued to monitor the situation so that no incidents to occur. He had to be sure that the similar one that happened on the second exam would not happen again, but he was worried about something. And his anxiety turned out to be justified. Suddenly, the basis of the portal cracked, but unfortunately, no one could notice this. But on this, the guys from the Academy 1 were not going to stop and wanted to burst as many enemy balls as possible. Their main goal was precisely Hinata, especially due to what happened the other day. Observing through binoculars, they also noticed Mitsuru, and despite the fact that he was a second year from Class A, did not consider him a strong rival. However, suddenly they disappeared from the field of view, applying a magic object, and Reiko could not properly aim. At that moment, they heard a strange sound, which seemed to come from behind. And it did not seem to them because, weakening vigilance, they immediately found themselves in the field of view of Hinata. They could not believe how he managed to get to them so quickly, because a second ago, he was a few hundred meters from them. He managed to burst the ball of one of the opponents before they managed to escape. Of course, Hinata could not let them go and rushed after them, but certain difficulties arose. The guys were also not stupid and prepared in advance, placing a trap from thin threads around, ruptures of which could lead to death. Because of these threads, Hinata could not move freely, no matter how fast it may be. The guy noted that this is all thanks to his 3-star artifact, Extension of the Territory. At that moment, he was able to release another thread, and if Hinata slowed down at least for a second, he would be dead. Thanks to this trick, they were able to drive him into a trap, at least it seemed to them. In fact, Hinata came to the aid of Hinata, who easily cut the threads with his knife. Since their attention was concentrated only on Hinata, they forgot about other participants in his team. This turned out to be a mistake, because of which the guys could easily surround them. It was far from what the guys from the Odin Academy expected. They did not think that opponents would have an artifact that could cut such inconspicuous threads. However, besides Mitsuru, everyone was sure that he was somewhere nearby, although Hinata did not know where he was. At that time, Mitsuru fought with another participant in the one, asking the rest to trust him. Therefore, now it was important for the guys to cope with their task without losing the ball. Hinata noted that since these are students of the One Academy, which he had already seen before, then Rin should be somewhere here. At first, he thought that she would fight Mitsuru, but was sure that she was nearby, despite the fact that he did not feel her presence. And his guesses were justified. Rin was straight behind him. He was able to notice her only at the last minute, and it seemed that she knew about his attention. She immediately attacked Subaru, bursting 2 of his balls at once and thereby disqualified him. No one had time to understand what happened, but Rin only said that in the end, this is all the competition. Hinata did not expect Rin to appear so suddenly and even with such an attack. Akane threw a magic item into the guys, which was a kind of smoke grenade to win the time for regrouping. While the enemies weakened vigilance, Hinata grabbed Akane and began to run. Akane did not understand why he was running away, but Hinata replied that it was now important for them to increase the distance. In addition, without an artifact, Subaru could not cope with the artifact of that guy. Hinata behaved quite carelessly, starting the attack, but did not understand how Rin could come so close to them. Rin was also impressed because she tried to hide her presence, but Hinata still felt her. Subaru asked if this knife was her artifact, to which Rin replied that this was not so. This knife is not even able to cut out the usual school uniform, but in order to burst the ball, it was quite enough, although Subaru did not understand how she managed to get so close. Rin replied that she was here from the very beginning, and on the contrary, they reduced the distance and came to her. Other participants in her team thought that she would run after Hinata and Akane, but she had other plans. After all, even if they catch them, it does not matter much. It is much more interesting to find the rest. Meanwhile, Hinata and Akane came directly to Chloe and Akino, who just hunted them. At this time, Shizuka and Haito went together, and she did not understand what Chloe and Akino were thinking. Haito replied that they were just more fixed on personal rivals than in the team battle. She also asked Haito who was then his opponent, and he immediately replied that it was Hinata. Shizuka noted that this is right, because someone should teach him a lesson. He completely forgot that their goal is not a victory at all costs, but that in one defeat, you can lose everything. That is why it is impossible to win recklessly, rushing into battle, because you can die. Shizuka also said that weaklings should be among the same weaklings and not try to climb to the top. And suddenly Rin approached them, noting that Shizu's words about the only defeat were true. But since this is so, then why Shizuka was still alive? She wanted to know about it. Rin replied that it was because Shizuka is a rare creature that uses any chance to survive. Shizu asked Haito not to get closer, telling Rin that if she was a creature, then in this case she too. After all, she could not do anything herself, but still continued to blame others. These words angered her. Rin without any hesitation rushed into the battle, heading right at Shizuka. However, as with Hinata, she failed to defeat or outwit Shizuka. Unlike Hinata, Shizuku had a more powerful attacking force, which Rin was difficult to cope with. Shizuka noted that Rin can see the future in a period of 4-5 seconds. Rin replied that it was, and she did not expect less from Shizuku. The artifact Rin is reverse vision. It significantly increases its physical abilities and allows you to predict the future. This is really one of the best supporting artifacts, but even if it can predict the future, without the ability to answer the attack, it is useless. However, Shizuku was deeply mistaken, thinking about the artifact Rin so frivolously. She can see the future 5 seconds ahead, only if not involved in battle, in which case her predictions become much more accurate. And Shizu did not even notice how Rin was able to burst 2 balls, actually making her a walking anchor. Hayato watched what was happening and thought about whether the artifact Rin would cause trouble. At that moment, Rin looked directly at him, as if telling him that he would pretend that he had not seen anything. Hayato immediately understood her hint and took her side, betraying Shizuka. At this time, Masuru was also not easy. At first glance, his opponent was much stronger. He continued to attack him without stopping, not giving him time to rest. The enemy was confident in the victory of his team, but Mitsuru had a completely different opinion, saying that not only power, but also luck was important in the battle. His team surpasses them in all respects, but not all of their balls are broken, and they are far from weak. Suddenly, Mitsuru took out something like a magic object or artifact and pricked it directly into himself. The enemy did not expect this, and was surprised that Mitsuru used his artifact only now. Mitsuru noted that this is the artifact Steroid Hulk, which has a strong but short-lived effect. But now this effect will last until the end of the team, and all the efforts of his team will pay off his fists. The situation between Rin and Shizuka worsened because now she wanted to avenge her for everything she did. On that hellish day, Rin lost everything, and the only thing that she had was the twin sister Ren. Together they tried to escape, and then it seemed to them that their life would end there. Then Rin decided that one day it would become stronger and destroy all creatures from another world to take revenge. But at some point, everything turned out to be not so hopeless when they were found Shizuku and Hinata, and they seemed to have hope. On that day, they truly met their comrades in misfortune. Since then, they began to study and train together, helping each other to cope with difficulties. Shizuku and Rin became real friends, and then it seemed to her that life was gradually getting better. They made it clear that you should not despair even in the most hopeless situations, because you can always find a way out. The school days were warm and joyful, and they all began to forget about the tragedy that had happened. However, the horrors did not end there, and before they became warriors, they again had to survive the disaster. When it seemed that the worst and most difficult stage was already behind, life threw up tests again and again. Hinata was able to save Rin, and they got out of school together. After a while, they saw a few more students leave school, but neither Ren nor Shizu was among them. And then, because of the smoke, the silhouette of Shizuka began to loom, but Ren was not with her. Other children suddenly began to blame Shizuku for everything, saying that she sacrificed everyone to escape herself. They shouted that she pushed other children into the arms of monsters. Since then, everyone began to hate her, but Rin still did not understand where her sister was. She refused to believe in the words of other children, considering it a lie, and asked Shizuku where Ren was. Shizuka did not know how to answer, so she simply told the truth. Ren dead. That day, Rin lost everything, her last close person. Meanwhile, Hinata continued to fight Chloe, who so wanted to grab him. In addition to Chloe, Akino intervened in battle, but for Hinata, it did not become a problem. Akane helped him to fight off the girl with the puppeteer artifact, easily repulsing her attacks. Together, they acted harmoniously, and their team spirit was on top. However, Akino did not understand why Klee did not work with Akane at first, because then they can easily defeat Hinata with a number. In addition, it was because of her that she lost 1 ball, and if she loses 1 more, she is disqualified. Meanwhile, the point was that Chloe had difficulties. He could not strike. Hinata all the time dodged his blades, and Chloe did not understand how it succeeded. But Hinata had problems because of the blades, he could not come close enough to attack. Chloe understood that Hinata could not repel the attack of his blades, so all he needed is to wait until the enemy opens. However, at that moment something strange happened. The world around began to be distorted, as if the portal began to close. Even Nashi noticed these changes, saying that the portal was still early to close, because the stage was not completed. She also felt this strange feeling, but still did not understand what was happening. Rin, it seems, knew something, but did not say, only noticing that from that moment Shizuku would have great troubles. At that moment, Haiho blew up his balls, and because of their severity, Shizu could not move. She did not understand why he betrayed her, because at first glance he seemed an ordinary guy. Rin noticed that they could be mistaken for accomplices, so she, perhaps, is better to leave. But Shizuku did not want to let her go, and demanded to explain what she was going to do. Rin replied that she was not going to do anything herself. Haido would do everything for her. He approached her close enough, but Shizu managed to react and fight off, despite the severity. Haido expected this, so he prepared another plan in advance. He established an inconspicuous explosives on the ball of each of the team members. When they all exploded, Shizuka could no longer move, as if chained to the ground. She understood what he did, so she asked what he was planning. Haito replied that he had just blew up the balls of Akino and Chloe with the help of his snake bomb, which is difficult to notice if it is well hidden. None of the guys expected this, and they were extremely shocked. However, he did this not only for the sake of their defeat, but also to weaken Shizuka. As a result, he was going to pick up her artifact in the same way, which was seized from Sherry. Shizuka was surprised, realizing that this was the same dart that aimed at Sherry then. But Haito said that she should not be so surprised because bad rumors were already going on about him. He added that she probably understood the risks when she allowed him to get so close. Haito also admitted that he was in Nibelheim long before admission to the academy. He explained that it was best to steal the artifact to its growth, so he was sent here to hide all the traces of the festival. So initially was their plan, and it seems that they managed to crank it. Shizuka thought that Rin was involved in this, but she only said that she had nothing to do with it. She was just a sacrifice that would abandon her and run away. At the same time, she added that this is like when Ren left Shizuka. Rin also warned that it was not worth waiting for help, because the rest are now in the epicenter of a huge flash of monsters. No one understood what happened, but one thing was clear. It was urgent to rescue students in the portal. Sherry could not believe what was happening, because this happened for the first time. Either her eyes are deceiving, or the D-Urge portal turned into a portal of a higher level, and the monsters that go outside became V-Rag. It became too dangerous next to the portal, and Jin ordered Sherry to leave as far as possible and help the others evacuate. A little more, and a monster would attack it, but at that moment Gonzo arrived in time. No one expected this at the festival, and Sherry sincerely hoped that everyone would be able to survive. Meanwhile, Rin said that she would also leave, because even outside the portal is unsafe. However, Haito was at a loss what outbreak of monsters the girl spoke of, because the boss informed him of something else. But one way or another, he had already stole the artifact Shizuka, and this could not but rejoice him. The first part of Hayo's plan was fulfilled, but he was not going to stop there. After all, his plan also included steal the artifact of Hinata, who liked the guild boss. He thought that he would easily check it, but then everything went awry. The suddenly appeared monster attacked him, and he dropped the artifact Shizuka, who fell directly at her feet. Haito did not understand where the monster got such a power, because even when they were cubs, he was Randed and appeared in the D-Uranda's portal. At this moment, the head of Nibelheim informed him that the plan is changing and it was urgent to leave. Haito did not want to retreat because they had been preparing for so long, but the boss ordered to immediately leave if he did not want to die. As a result, Haito nevertheless decided to retreat, telling Shizuka that he was not going to kill her, but it seems that her luck was over. He used a trick with a shadow to instantly leave the portal. At this time, Shizuka tried to return her artifact, but it was useless. In addition, the monster was already standing right in front of her, and it seemed to her that this was the end. She thought that perhaps this was the reckoning for that day and her obsession with force. Shizuka was in despair, and it seems that she would not be able to keep the promise given by Ren. And when it seemed that it was already over, at that moment Hinata appeared and repelled the monster attack. Shizuka was amazed when he saw him, not understanding what he was doing here. Suddenly, a toy Akino, who helps them find each other, got out of her pocket. Hinata said that Chloe gave this toy to him, adding that this would help to find it. However, Shizuka did not understand why it was he, and not Chloe or Akino. Hinata explained that at first they also did not understand anything, and did not know how to act. Akane said that such enemies usually appear in V-wrapping portals, but they are in a D-Gilge. Hinata noted that in this case, it is better for them to get out of here as soon as possible. Then Chloe gave him this toy, saying that this would help to find Shizuka. He noted that if he runs or Akino, it will take too much time. But Akane did not understand his intentions and thought that they were hiding something. Chloe said that earlier Haito had helped a couple of times to fight strong opponents. He did not know his true face, but he was sure that he was hiding something and was right. Their suddenly bursting balls were confirmation, and it seems that now he is aimed at Shizuka. Akane did not agree with them and did not understand why they should save her. Despite this, Chloe asked Hinata to do this, and in the meantime they would lead her out of the portal. Hinata asked him, was he not on the side of Haito once he helped him? Chloe replied that he did not care about the rest, because people consider him a moron and bully, spreading bad rumors about him. However, he was never the one who so easily abandoned his comrades in trouble, so he asked for help from Hinata. After that, Hinata rushed in search of Shizuku and fortunately managed to do it on time. But Shizuku did not understand why he was doing this and told him to run away because he could die at the hands of the monster. However, Hinata did not plan to leave, and even more so to give up. Shizuka looked at this and was surprised. Either Hinata is too stupid or too overestimating her strength, and screamed to leave. But Hinata said that he would not run away and would fight to the last. He always spared about that day and asked himself why Ren did not return after her. He did not know what happened then, but since then, he noticed how Shizu was restlessly striving for strength. Shizuka replied that this was so, and this is what it led to. Now it is exhausted and is a step away from death. She also admitted that she was cruel even to him, constantly neglecting them. The rest also hated her, saying that they would stop going to school only because of her presence. She even considered Hinata at all in the eye, so she believed that she deserved such death. But he replied that this was not so, and no matter how bad others were talking about her, he doesn't care. Because Shizuku, whom he knows, has always been and will be a person who cared for others, just as she always helped him from their early childhood, and then secretly watched how he trained and become stronger. Therefore, be that as it may, for him Shizuku will forever remain a good person. His words touched Shizuka, and she became even more embarrassing for everything she did. In the meantime, Hinata continued to try to defeat the monster, thinking that he could do it without difficulty. He managed to get closer and strike, but this was not enough. The monster attacked in response, leaning Hinata as far away from himself as possible. Hinata realized that this was not enough, and the time had come to apply the very decisive blow that he used in the Nashi portal. However, this required time, effort, and great endurance, but Hinata was ready to sacrifice it. To deliver the most powerful blow as possible, he needed to accumulate the maximum of strength, starting from the ground faster and faster. Using acceleration, he had to disperse all his strength and then hit straight along the monster. And he succeeded. Hinata was able to accumulate and concentrate a huge amount of power. He attacked the monster, and Shizuka thought that he would just die now, but was amazed when he saw who Hinata became. With a powerful blow, he pierced the monster through, leaving a huge hole in his body and thereby defeating him and saved his girlfriend. A powerful explosion formed in place of the monster. This is all that remained from him after the hit of Hinata. As expected, such an attack greatly exhausted, even though Hinata improved its basic skills. Shizuka could not believe in what she saw, thinking that perhaps she was mistaken. And it all started just from the day when the monsters attacked their school, the day of a large catastrophe. Then Shizu took on the role of the leader and ordered the guys to quickly turn their desks and barricadely. They managed to build a small wall to protect themselves from monsters. Shizuka said to the rest in no case do not move and not to publish unnecessary noise. And some did not understand why they could not just take and escape as soon as possible. Shizuka explained to them that these monsters react only to movement, so they better sit here in silence. She also noted that these monsters have poor vision and learned about this from the books. However, the girl considered it strange because she did not have any artifact for the battle, so why should she know about this? Ren doubted her plan, but still more inclined to the idea that they should run as soon as possible. But Shizu convinced her, saying that it was better to wait because someone should come for them. At some point, one of the monsters noticed them and began to disassemble the barricade. One of the girls was very scared and ran where they looked. The monster immediately reacted and rushed at her, but Shizuka jumped at him and saved her classmate. Despite her request not to move, everyone rushed to the exit. At this moment, the creature grabbed Shizuka and she thought that she would die now. However, the monster left her and she fell right in the running girls. Shizuka continued to scream the rest so that no one would move, otherwise they would not survive. But one of the girls kicked her under the feet of the monsters to have time to run away with her friend. It seemed to Shizuku that it was all over for her and the monsters were about to kill her. However, at the moment when she was attacked, Ren jumped under the blow, saving her friend. Shizuka could not believe that one of the best friends died right before her eyes. While the rest of the children ran away, she was in a state of shock and could not even move. She did not understand why Ren did this, and she asked to promise to become stronger and someday kill all the monsters from another world. Then Shizuku did not know whose wine and what happened, perhaps those who ran away. But then she realized that everyone was desperately trying to survive, and she herself expected this. Therefore, Shizuka decided that only she was to blame, that she hoped for help from people like them. And in her weakness, because even now she was useless. Hinata asked if she said that weakness only interferes with them. But then, at school, it seems that everyone was weak. Did she really want to say that Ren was also a weakle? His words caused her even more emotions, and she replied that this was not so. After all, in fact, neither Ren, nor he, nor Rin have never been weaklings. They continued to fight to the last, while the forces remained. Then Shizuka realized that all this time she was deeply mistaken, and she was sincerely sorry. However, Hinata said that they should hurry and get out of here, because he himself does not understand what is happening now. Shizuka was exhausted, lost her artifact, and could not move. Hinata understood everything and ordered her to climb onto his back to get to his exit together. She asked if it would be hard for him, because he again changed his suit. Hinata replied that even so, it would still continue to protect her. On the way, Shizuka admitted that from the very beginning she was disappointed in him, not knowing why. Perhaps because she had high expectations, and she also considered him a fool, since he always got into fights. Hinata agreed, saying that she was right. He was just much stubborn than she thinks. Suddenly a monster appeared in front of them, and in their state it would be extremely difficult to cope with him. But at the same moment, he jumped out of the forest Mitsur and defeated the monster with one blow. Hinata and Shizuka were surprised, and at the same time glad that he arrived in time. Meanwhile, the Deldoras continued evacuation, and fortunately, almost no one was injured. Hinata and Shizuka also got out of the portal, albeit with great difficulty. Chloe noted that they came just in time, as he expected, because Hinata did not let him down. However, Hinata replied that he would still argue with the fact that they had time on time. Chloe did not understand what he was talking about and asked what he had in mind. Then Shizuka showed an artifact, which was now imprisoned in a cube, and it became clear to everyone. The fears of Chloe were confirmed, and he realized why Haito then did not fight back. Shizuka thanked Chloe and Akino for his help, because without them she would have died. Chloe replied that everything was fine, especially since he himself was in debt in front of her. Only Hinata and Shizuka returned from the portal, and Akane was alarmed, not seeing Mitsuru with them. Hinata explained that everything was in order with him, and thanks to Mitsuru, he and Shizuka were able to get out. Now he is in Midatsek, as he lost consciousness immediately after the exit. Subaru called him a bastard, since he fainted barely returning. But Hinata asked him not to talk about Mitsuru because he is much stronger than it seems. If not for his strength, it is not known they could get out of the portal alive. Hinata noted that Mitsuru is so good guy that he almost cried. His artifact turned out to be so strong that he could easily break the bracelets. Maho joined them and said that the relic of the president of their club is very powerful, but you can only use it for long. Hikari and Sherry also came with Maho, and they were glad to see that everything was in order with the guys. Sherry noted that not many people were injured outside the dome, thanks to operational actions. The portal was exactly where most of the Deldora Guild was located. However, there were no exact causes of what happened, and no one could determine them. It was only clear that such a precedent had not happened before. Hikari was glad to see Shizuka, saying that from their last meeting she had changed a lot and became unusually strong. Shizuka thanked her, adding that after such a battle she would not have interfered with rest. Sherry asked if Shizuka was going to go to Nibelheim. It was so, because she did not know how to return the artifact, and believed that the answer could only be found there. Miss Sherry was surprised to learn that Haito was from Nibelheim, because it meant that now the Thieves Guild penetrated the academy. Shizuka said that they had completely different plans, and they themselves did not suspect that everything would turn out like that. However, the only one who could know this in advance was most likely Rin. Shizuka realized that since Rin could predict the future, she knew for sure that Hinata would come to save her. But even so, she did not understand what exactly Rin planned. Only one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. Sherry also asked if the guys managed to pick up the weapon with which Haito took the relic. But unfortunately, Haito dropped him when he was attacked, and there was no time to look for him. At this time, the teacher called and reported that the magical weapon, with the help of which Haito stole the artifact, still managed to take with him. However, if they find it, they can quickly return the sealed artifacts. If everything goes successfully, then Shizuka and Hinata will receive their artifacts back. Speaking about the Hinata artifact, Sherry had in mind the artifact Shield, belonging to his father, and whether it is already used or not, Hinata himself will decide, and no one else. Meanwhile, a rapid discussion of what happened continued on the internet, and many first heard about an organization called Nibelheim. After destroying the nucleus of the portal, it was immediately closed, and the military festival, of course, was cancelled. Initially, Hinata believed that Nibelheim was behind this, but something was much more strange. Nashi noted that the portal moved to the second phase, and in the future such incidents will take place endlessly. Over time, more and more dangerous portals will begin to appear, much more difficult than those that were before. Hinata asked her how she knew this, but Nashi replied that she could not say. After all, if she tells, they will see it, and from this, Hinata had even more questions. Meanwhile, Nashi opened another portal, and Hinata received the key to the truth, which allows to enter the trial portal under the code word Veritas. Nashi, without really explaining anything, said that there was almost no time left, and she would wait for him at the farthest point. When he gets to her, she will explain everything, and if it turns out to be true, he will then be able to find her. And until then, she will look forward to him and hope that she was not mistaken. The next morning, Hinata went to the academy and was surprised when Akane and Subaru noticed in a crowd of students. The reason for such a crowd was the emergence of many new internship programs. There was no official announcement yet, but new portals appeared one after another. Subaru noted that this is probably due to that incident at the festival. Mitsuri also joined them, saying that the requirements for interns were also tightened. Akane asked if he was all right after what happened. He replied that there was no reason for concern because he was always with him after using the artifact. Hinata asked him what for the new requirements for interns, and one of them was to be a mercenary without a guild. Subaru asked what kind of mercenary it was and how so, and Akane reminded him that they were going through this under the school curriculum, but he, as usual, slept in the lessons. Akane explained that mercenaries are people with an official permission to visit portals that can perform various tasks depending on their reputation. Applications for the destruction of portals come from the state, and mainly participants in large guilds are engaged in them. But the number of new portals has already exceeded the possibilities of guilds. Therefore, students are now called mercenaries without guilds. Also, if they perform an internship for the destruction of the rank portal with or higher, they can receive official permission before the release. Such is it. Hinata noted that most of the applications come from the Phoenix Guild. Mitsuri replied that in this case they are dealing with most portals, which is not surprising, because this is a S-Rag guild. However, the Phoenix Guild, namely with Ginja, Hinata had his own accounts. He did not understand where they got so many participants to fulfill so many applications at the same time. After the festival, school life Shizuka has changed a lot. Classmates began to discuss her right in front of her, each time recalling that she could no longer use the artifact. They did not understand why she still hadn't expelled. Can she really forget what it was to be the best in the class? But in the crowd of haters, there were those who treated her with understanding. Sachi tried to cheer her up so that she was not so dreary, but this only annoyed Shizuka. She tried to help and said that she would not pay attention to unpleasant words. Shizuka did not understand why everyone had changed her opinion about her so quickly, and asked Sachi if she also thought that this was her payment. Sachi was frank with her, saying that Shizuku rarely listens to others and, having made a decision, no longer retreats. She has a really difficult character, which is why it is difficult to get along with her, and condescending behavior, to put it mildly, is not the best. But despite all this, she continues to work much more than others. Sachi said that Shizuku, who is now sitting in front of her, looks like a mountain fell from her shoulders. And such Shizuku will not lose to anyone else, so it makes no sense to mock her. Sachi added that if Shizu returned her artifact, then she would be so allowed to join her, as if parodying Shizuka herself. Chloe and Akino also remained on the side of Shizuka, despite the fact that she lost her artifact. They said that if someone wants to join their team, then their opinion also matters, because all of them are one team. At this time, in the Phoenix Guild, the work of the boiling, the destruction of portals was their main task. Jinji could not stop laughing with joy, because so far for someone the discovery of new portals trouble. For him it was a golden vein. Who would have thought that one day everything would turn out like this, and he will be able to earn millions only on the cleaning of the portals? However, this would not have happened if he continued to act alone, so he concluded an alliance with the boss of the Guild of Thieves. So with his success, he owed Magant, the head of Nibelheim, although he asked to do without sublimation. Jinji noted that even the weakest person can become useful. It is only worth giving him a strong artifact. He came up with a new way of earnings to select strong artifacts, such as sherry from, for example, and distribute them weak, and in case of death, just pick it up. When Genji first heard about the incident at the festival, he was very scared, but it was precisely thanks to this incident that he will soon shine in a new way.